Welcome to Newsfile on Joy News. On radio, that's on Joy 99.7 FM in Accra and on our affiliates across the country, and on television on the Joy News channel on Multi-TV. We're also online at www.myjoyonline.com or multitvworld.com/streams. My name is Kojo Oponkroma. This Saturday morning, a number of subjects engage our attention. Myself and my guest will start off with some analysis, and we'll be happy to hear your thoughts as you have followed these headlines over the week. Government this week announced some new rules for the payment of judgment debts. If it's below 10 million Ghana cedis, the AG can exercise discretion and pay. If it's up to 50 million Ghana cedis, the president could authorize discretion and pay. And if it's beyond, cabinet may have to exercise discretion and pay. There are a few questions that are coming up following that directive, whether or not this is an attempt to politically save face or it's a bold instruction in our governance exercise. My guests will give us their views. I'll be happy to hear yours as well. Also this week, a number of interesting things, including a little bit of a brouhaha over the president's health. The president announced that he was going to the U.S. for a medical checkup. He will be away, as he informed Parliament, for some 10 days. There have been accusations on the side of the government and its communication machinery that the minority, the opposition MPP, have been trying to play politics with it, and they just say they've just been wishing the president well following a statement issued by their presidential candidate. While you share your thoughts and while my guests weigh in on that, we'll be asking how should questions about a president's health be dealt with in the near future. Also this week, state prosecutors were before the Supreme Court asking for a certiorari to quash proceedings in the High Court on the Kennedy Ejapong matter. We'll hear what our guests think of that particular development in the courts. And the government white paper on the Constitution Review Commission's recommendations, we're told, has been finalized. A lot of details leaping into the media about the tenure of the president to stay for 4 years, the president to pay tax, majority of ministers no longer need to be members of parliament, DCs could possibly be elected. Question, if voted for, could these amendments become the panacea to our governance challenge? Samuel George Nate is a member of the government's communication team. He's joining us this morning for our analysis. Matthew Opoku Prempeh is member of parliament for the Menchia constituency. Kojo Asante is a senior research officer at the CDD. And Abdul Malik Kwekubako is the managing editor of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Gentlemen, good morning and thank you for joining us. We'll start off quickly on the very first subject of the payment of judgment debts. And earlier this week, a cabinet decision was announced. It's not exactly clear when that decision was taken, but it was announced earlier this week on what the new limits are. Shortly, I will play back to you a conversation I had with Sam Okudzeto-Ablakwa, Deputy Information Minister, who explained what the new rules were and why they've been put in place. First, let's take a listen, and then we'll start off with our thoughts on that subject.
The benchmarks, there are three. Between 1 and 10 million, the Attorney General can use his discretion. Between 10 and 50 million, the President can exercise executive approval. So that is within the domain of the President. But above 50 million Ghana cedis, cabinet, the entire cabinet will have to take a decision on that. So there are three thresholds we are looking at. Now, this decision has become necessary based on an assessment that the Attorney General carried out of the history of judgment debts and the payment of these judgment debts. The assessment revealed that there is no clear guideline which has been followed over the years. And so this is an effort to come out with very clear guidelines as to who has a final authority when making these payments. I must be quick to add, however, that judgment debts are costs that are determined by the courts, and so this is not an attempt to, as you may sideline the judiciary or disregard or disrespect the independence of the judiciary. Judgment debts do not leave any options, if you like, for the executive, else you would be in contempt or you would be exercising wrongful authority, because judicial judgments are supposed to be independent and respected by all. So we are not saying that it is an attempt by either cabinet or the president or the attorney general, depending on the threshold, to decide whether they will pay or not. It is just to do with planning, because it is now clear that these judgment debts constitute a very high expenditure item. They are very significant, and so it will have to come to these authorities so that there can be appropriate planning, so that if you can even go into negotiation with these parties as to how you intend to pay them, how many tranches and all of that, so that the entire cabinet can be aware, and whatever sacrifices will have to be made in executing these payments will be done. Then there is also another aspect to this whole discussion, which has to do with how these judgment debts in the first place can be avoided. Cabinet also took a decision that the Attorney General will have to write to all MMDAs who have these cases in courts or who claims have been made on them. They have to inform the Attorney General early. It has been observed that there are times that these claims are allowed to accrue, the interest accrues and all of that, and it is not brought to the Attorney General in good time. Another aspect to this cabinet decision, which has to do with possible surcharging. If you read the Auditor General's report of 2009, the Auditor General was of the view that some public officers clearly and willfully engage in actions that lead to these judgment debts. Why should all of us suffer for the actions of one person? So the entire nation, the taxpayer, is burdened with this recklessness of one person. So there's also the item of surcharging, which the Attorney General is supposed to develop further based on the recommendation of the Auditor General in the 2009 Auditor General's report.
Did this decision also cover settlement payments?
Yes, a decision was taken on that, and in that case, Cabinet decided that as much as possible, Attorney Generals should go the full haul. They should always put in a fight as is possible, except it is so clear, it is unambiguous that for this everybody agrees that we have erred, and so you can just move into settlement.
That's Sam Okudzeto-Ablakwa, Deputy Information Minister, speaking to me earlier this week. Mr. Matthew Prempe, let me start with you. Is this a political attempt to save face, or this is a bold instruction that will deepen our governance exercise?
This is an exercise for the first time to tell Ghanaians that Atta Mills' government doesn't know what it is doing. This is an admission of an indecisive government. This is a decision of a government that is telling the whole Ghanaians that we've been so corrupted that we are begging for a face-saving measure. See, I'll start from the two questions you asked. Does this cover settlement debts or settlement payments? What do you mean by settlement payments? Settlement payments is that two bodies have agreed, right? And as far as Ghana's constitution is concerned, there cannot be any settlement payment without the involvement of the Attorney General. So what are they trying to say? When you come to the judgment debts, you heard him say that the Attorney General does not take notice of some of these things. When somebody goes to court to sue the government, who represents government? So this charade of trying to bring guidelines is a lie. It's plainly, you see, in Ghana's constitution, Article 293 emphasizes the point that the government of Ghana can be sued. And to what extent that you go to defend the Ghana government, and to what extent people are even involved in Article 293. apart from Article 293, there's an act in Ghana here called the State Proceedings Act, I think Act 555, that also describes that if you take government to court, what happens? If somebody takes government to court and that person's win a judgment, there is no ceiling anywhere that, say, a president can have 50. Even this guideline they are bringing out, cabinet seems to be higher than the president, which does not exist in our constitution. Somebody should show me a part of Ghana's constitution that says cabinet is higher than the president. Everybody on the cabinet serves on the pleasure of the president. So I don't know what they are trying to achieve to say 10 to 50 million. If the court says Ghana government is liable to a debt of 100 million, who are you, including the president, to say you are not paying? The only relief you have is to stagger the payment or agree terms of payment with the person who has won the suit. So it's not neither here nor there. But let me start. You said the Attorney General has been given a discretion to pay 10 million. From whose budget? The Attorney General, as far as I'm concerned, hasn't got any budget, a pot of money sitting here and say that, oh, if you sue me and it's less than 10 million, I'm going to dip my hands in Attorney General. The Attorney General has no such account. What exists in reality is that when somebody wins a case, the person goes to court to get a certificate of judgment against the Attorney General and the Controller and Accountant General. Then the Attorney General writes to the Ministry of Finance that we are liable for this payment, so negotiate to pay. If you have a proper functioning government, the Ministry of Finance would definitely, or the Minister of Finance, or definitely the Attorney General, would inform the Chief of Staff. In fact, some of the circulars that you see that the Chief of Staff is served. Then it is only the Minister of Finance who can issue a specific warrant for the Controller Accountant General, who is the Ghana government's banker, to issue payment, to go to the Bank of Ghana to issue final payment. So I don't know where this is coming from, unless it's to distract our attention from what has happened. And let me go to what has happened. How was this going to affect Woyomi? He said, go and defend the government. It is the person who is supposed to go and defend government who went to court to say that we don't have a case. And when he went to court to say that, oh, the previous one that I said I don't have a case, now I have a case, so the court said only pay the first installment and withhold till your case finishes. They still went ahead and paid. So it's got nothing, absolutely nothing to do with what has happened in this country, where only 3 institutions or 3 bodies have been paid over $200 million, where we should not have paid. But the problem is that under President Mills, or under every time President Mills is giving this country to run, or something in this country to run, he ends up giving his cronies and his friends millions of dollars without payment. He went to court, President Mills, as head of the economic management team, when we paid $20 million to Julia Cotton. Listen to what he told the court. He told the court that we needed rice so badly that we were prepared to lie down for Julia Cotton to walk over us. It's in court transcripts. And he was the head of the economic management team. And he sanctioned, when the Americans had advised Ghanaians not to pay, he sanctioned that Julia Cotton would be paid even more money. That was President Mills. In February 2009, when he came to give his first State of the Nation address, when no judgment debt existed, President Mills talked about judgment debts. So he knew that he had plotted with some of his cronies and his friends to come and take away our money. Because when you look at the Woyomi judgment debt scandal, it beggars belief that we are in this country and such a thing can happen. Unless it's about collusion, people colluding to loot the money of the coffers of the state. Woyomi could never have happened. The man himself says he has no contract. The man himself is on air. So if he had no contract, who ordered him to be paid? And again, it is the Attorney General who ordered Woyomi to be paid. So this whole thing about 10 million, 5 million, 50 million is neither here nor there. It cannot cover for the corrupt payments that this government, President Mills, has made to individuals who are not worth it. And how is it going to affect those things?
But if you follow the discussions on this whole judgment and settlement payment scandal, as you refer to it, the argument has been made that, you know, persons higher up the rank should have known and should have authorized, and sometimes we were told some of them had tried to stop it. In other instances, like the CP1, for instance, Cabinet, we're told, has sent a response to the Public Accounts Committee that Cabinet approval was not sought. And for some, this new set of rules by government seeks to clear up that murky area in which some of these payments are made without recourse to higher authority.
You're right. But that's what I said. There's no responsibility on cabinet. We are not exercising a prime ministerial form of government. All executive power in our constitution resides in the president. It is not a cabinet. When the president decides to say, yes, I've been informed, go ahead and pay or go ahead and fight, it is the president that has decided, not cabinet. That is the point. Since we came to this parliament, every loan, 3 billion Chinese dollar loan, XTS, everything, has all come to parliament with executive approval, not cabinet. Not cabinet. So cabinet does not exist with any fiduciary powers or any statutory powers in our constitution. So who are they to override the president that Ghanaians have elected and given, reposed their executive authority in him? So that is a lie. It's something they are just throwing out there to cause confusion. Now, this government is responsible, it's up and doing. It is absolutely not up and doing. Kojo, no wonder, just this week, the Foreign Policy magazine, a reputed magazine in the world, which categorizes states in the world, have come out to say Ghana is a borderline failed state. Since 2009 under Atta Mills, Ghana has been deteriorating in their rankings. Because if you look at what is happening, CP was paid money. CP owed Ghana government taxes. And Attorney General without power, where the Constitution says it's only Parliament that can waive taxes. Attorney General rise to waive the taxes. And we think we are being governed. We think that 94 million euro that CP has been given will not do anything in this country. When we go for loans as little as 1 million to come and build schools. That is my problem. The fundamental problem is that who is watching over this country? Who is the leader in this country? Who is taking decisions on behalf? Of course, it was on your program here that we were told by the governor's chief communicator that when the Black Star was playing match, the president was nowhere to be found. So decisions were taken on behalf of the president. By who?
He didn't exactly say that. He said he was in the midst of some senior persons when that decision was taken.
That decision was made. That means the president was not there because subsequently we got a clarification that bordered on obfuscation. We got a clarification that we didn't understand. So where was the president at that time? Where was the president? You see, when we ask the question, where was the president? Some minions misconstrue it as if we are undermining the president. But when you are in this country, Kojo, and you know daily what is going on, what Ghanaians are going through, you ask yourself, have we voted for a president? And if we have, where is he? I know that we will come to certain topics that will bring this for. But under President Mills, we are failing. Transparency Index, foreign policy, failed states. Ghana is a borderline failed state.
I'd like to see a copy of that magazine. I haven't had
Yes, I'll show you. I can give you the,
but I'd
the
love
web
to see
address.
A copy of it. Quickly, do you think that
It's
this
on the web, actually.
Okay, please help me with the directions.
Yeah,
I'll go read it. Do you think that this directive in any way can help improve how this particular subject of judgment and settlement payments are executed? Because as we understand, it is not something new in our body politic. It has been there so long as government is taken to court sometimes. There are some of these payments that have to be made. Does this directive in your mind help how we deal with it as a country in any way, or you think it's just something that we should throw out through the window?
You see, listen to what Okujeto says. If it's between 10 and 50 million, the president can exercise executive approval on a judgment debt. So is he saying that if somebody has gone to court and has gotten, say, pay $45 million to that person or that institution or that body, and the president can then sit and say, I won't pay? That is the joke that they are making out of the presidency. When somebody has gone to court and said, Ghana government, you owe Mr. A, or institution B, 45 million, and you say executive approval, does that mean the president can say, I won't pay? Because let's not take governance for Gota football match. No, let's be responsible in our communication to the populace who elected us. Let Okujeto come and explain what he means by this. If it's not a charade to say he's talking. He was talking, but he was not communicating. Obviously. Then you say that greater than 50 million, what is the entire cabinet? What is it? People who are serving at the discretion of the president? So, this thing cannot, see, the fundamental point is that those judgment debts that have been paid, we are saying that nearly 50% of them should not have been paid. And the processes went through everything right for those to be paid. The government's representative who should have defended the government, who should have acted on the government, who should have made sure Ghana doesn't lose these sums of money, is the person who is implicated. Let me land by saying that a certain official of the Attorney General's department was sent to court. Because Yoko, the president ordered Yoko, right, to investigate. Yoko said that man has been paid 400,000 and he's the one dealing with the whole Woyomi case. A certain man called Paul, also in the legal department of the Ministry of Finance, the director, was also saying that he authorized a memo. Kojo Nkrumah, that's what Yoko said. They should be charged. The government, the state prosecutor, and the Attorney General said, yes, they have done this thing criminally. I'm going to retrieve Ghana's money for them. Another Attorney General comes into the first one was kicked out because he was pursuing Ghana's money. The second one comes in and goes and drops charges. You know why they drop the charges against those people?
They haven't explained.
They drop the charges, and I'm explaining to you. They drop the charges against those people because those people had enough evidence to show that this Woyomi scandal, the cabinet had approved it. I'm not only going to say that. If those people have been tried, other people would have been drawn in. And that is why the government doesn't want to face. So the point about this whole thing is that the 51 million Woyomi's money, Woyomi didn't walk to Bank of Ghana and open the vault and took the money, had been done with collusion and connivance at the top hierarchy of government, including the president.
An instruction like this can, I mean, assuming without admitting that what you're saying is true, you don't think
it's
an
going to make it worse.
Like this would actually prevent it in the future?
Kojo, it is going to make this corrupted you, this stealing brigade, worse. It's going to make it worse.
Let me come to Kojo Asante. Kojo, do you think that in growing our governance exercise, an instruction like this helps out in any way? Even for those who seem to believe that the things that have happened in the past, some of them happened as a result of collusion. You don't think that this new instruction can help clear it up in any way?
Well, good morning to your listeners and to your viewers.
You have to speak up a bit for me.
Sorry, okay. First of all, let me say that I'm glad that we are having this conversation, because one of the things that I think has been missing in what the Woyomi scandal has sort of revealed, because for me I see it as more of a symptom. It's not the root cause of the problem. Is that we're talking about institutional processes. And if you look at what the Yoko report revealed, and even some of the statements by Martin Amidu and so on, it's the whole chain of authority and decision making and the breakdown in that chain, which sort of has provided opportunity for things like the Woyomi matter to happen. So I'm glad this directive has sort of brought back for me into center stage the issue of trying to fix the system and the process, because I am not sure that we will be able to avoid another Woyomi scandal if we don't really address that kind of problem. If you go back to the concerns that have been raised about judgment debts, and I think judgment debts are sort of used in a very loose manner, to include actually, debts that are arising from a judgment of a court. Some has to do with sort of negotiated settlements between government when a claim has been brought, but not necessarily sort of a settlement or a settlement of the court. So all those things have been put together. But the concerns, one has been the size. So there has been a discussion that, look, in the last 3 years, we're paying about 600 million or so worth of judgment debts, loosely put. That is a serious problem. It can cause a strain on your budget because you just haven't planned for these things properly, and if you are not tracking them, it can also be a problem. And also the manner in which the AG has settled some of the claims or have tried to negotiate after a judgment has been passed on some of these cases. Then the quality of representation of the AG's office. Attorneys not going to attend to court and represent the interests of the state, the capacity of those who are representing the interests of the state. Then the payment procedures. So to some extent, if you look at this directive, you can say, well, to some extent it's trying to address the issues of thresholds and so on with the payment procedures. But again, I mean, one of the issues I'm worried about that is, should it be as a matter of government directive? Should it be a legislative instrument that you put so that it's properly defined and doesn't become too discretionary. But you know a little bit in any institution that you work in, setting the threshold will depend on how much money is running through, so that you can assign proper responsibilities at different levels. And so that's more difficult to speculate on. I mean, those who deal with our public finances know how much money we are dealing with to put a sort of reasonable threshold and who should be responsible for it and so on. So in the 4 items I've listed, the only one that you will say sort of this will help to address would be maybe the payment procedures. So then it comes back to for me, whether it's addressing the core issues, because from up till now, I mean, and we are, I think, 6 months after the issue sort of over the Christmas period came out, and this has been going on since 2010, right? We have not had a serious inquiry into the institutional breakdown. If at any point the president had cause to instruct that payment should not be made and somebody contravened the orders of the president, those people cannot still be in government. That for me was a serious institutional breakdown, and a serious contravention of all the rules of executive power. So I would have liked to see a lot more done in that area. I would like to understand the chain between the Attorney General, the Ministry of Finance, the Bank of Ghana, all those institutional processes reviewed to see whether or not it is human failure, it is legal procedures, it is people just not paying attention, it is lack of information. We need to go into this because, as I said, I am not sure that we can avoid another Oyome if these things are still in the system. So I would have expected a much more elaborate, inquiry into some of these institutional processes to try to make sure that we don't have to deal with this problem. And this problem, fortunately, is not just today. You should read the Auditor General's report year in, year out. Things like retiring imprest. People still don't retire imprest, and they come and give excuses about, and the person has died and gone. It's repetitive. So there's a serious problem with our public financial management systems. And up to today, even though the Wyoming case is in court, we have a criminal and a civil procedure still going on, we have not looked at this as larger for me, even more important about going forward. And I'll give you an analogy to how, for example, the UK have dealt with the Murdoch issue. When the matter broke, and they have been quite systematic. They've looked at every aspect to make sure that the problem that came up, is not repeated. And they have been persistent looking at systems, because at the end, that is what you cannot trust human beings to be saints and do what you say they should do. So you have to always, when you have a breakdown like that, you want to go back to your system and your processes and look at what is going on and say, should I tighten this, or what is the problem, and so on. And I think that for me, that's what I want to see. And I haven't seen that.
A certain broader response.
It's a much broader, more detailed, getting down and drilling in and seeing, how can this happen in our system, and how can we fix it? That for me would actually deal with not the 50 million we might lose or gone already, but trying to avoid losing another 50 million. In the future.
But wouldn't you say government has demonstrated some good faith, at least even if it's not a broader inquiry, in what it thinks is the problem, in trying to tackle it with this new directive?
That's why I'm saying that for me, I would like to have more of this discussion. I don't think it goes far enough. It's, as I said, even in listing the 4 things that I think, issues that everybody sort of agree, it may deal with the payment procedure and the threshold. But even that, the question is, how much discretion are you talking about, and so on and so forth. It is very difficult to always set thresholds because it depends on how much money is coming through and all of that. But it has to, as I said, this has been going on. This issue has been going on. If President Mills wants to leave a legacy, I think we have to really drill down into this matter, because seriously, as taxpayers, giving 50 million or so free to somebody who has not worked for it, it's not something that it hurts. I mean, I think.
George, let me bring you in our conversation at this point. Mr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh holds a view that this is just, whitewash over a dirty wall. Those are my words, but if I got you well, that's what you're trying to say. Mr. Kojo seems to suggest that there are more questions than answers in this whole basket of judgment and settlement debt payment. And if indeed government wants to deal with it, government perhaps needs to adopt a broader approach and deal with many of the other things and not just this issue of thresholds. Let me get a reaction from you.
Well, a very good morning to our listeners and viewers, and to my co-panelist and yourself, Kojo. I think an elderly statesman once said something to me which has stuck with me, that the problem of this nation is that the minority in this country which is educated, we do a lot of disservice to this country, especially those of us who sit on radio and TV to do political analysis, because we do not address issues from the level of academic intelligentsia, but rather from very partisan political positions. I listened to Matthew Opoku Prempeh on my way here, and some of the positions he took, I think, were just skewed to achieve cheap political points. The statement, the interview you had with Okudzeto Ablakwa, which you played, I think was very clear, and it was not ambiguous. The ambiguity Matthew tried to create as to what the threshold was meant to be, whether it meant that government or the president was going to exercise authority over a court ruling, doesn't arise. And I don't even see why we want to draw those parallels into this discussion and muddy the waters and confuse the general public more. The statement is clear. The executive respects the integrities of the courts, be them local or international. When the courts, be it Ghanaian court or international court, as in the CP case, gives judgment against the Republic of Ghana, the executive respects that decision. But you see, this is a government which is led by a man who believes in building strong institutions. My brother was speaking about the Rupert Murdoch case, and you clearly see an immediate past, two past prime ministers, and an even sitting prime minister of the UK was someone before the Livingston inquiry, because institutions are working. It is not an issue of individuals being bigger than national institutions or state institutions. And until we move this country and our governance to a place where institutions do not respect personalities, but personalities are subject to the institutions of state, we're engaged in a secular dance that will take us nowhere. If we have the requisite framework, previous government, look, from Kwame Nkrumah's time, or maybe after Kwame Nkrumah, we have been paying judgment debts. It's not like the Kufuor administration did not pay judgment debts. They did. But there is no institutional framework of any sort. Every government comes in and just tries to do something. This is not law, but at least this is a cabinet policy which has been released. Just like the Accra Development Plan was not law, but it was a government policy which the Kufuor administration came in, embraced, and deepened with the protocol allocations and infilling policy. Now the point here is, what we need to do is to ensure that there is a framework that is set so that we can track some of these payments and know how these payments are made. Because look, as a citizen of this republic, be me NDC, CPP or NPP, it is my taxpayers' money, my tax I paid, which is used to settle this debt. And I expect some level of accountability from the state. And if that is required by the Ghanaian people, it is very necessary that we are able to achieve the best possible deal. Now, let's not forget, the CP case, for example, there's a memo which has become public document in the past week. It was published by the Inquirer. The memo by the then Attorney General, Joe Gatti, to the Minister of Finance, the late Bawedu, stating some of the conditions that had to be met. The fact that government was delaying payment, and an interest of over 8,000 euros per day was accruing on that judgment debt. When finally we decided to sit down with them and settle, when we came into office, clearly, interest alone had ballooned the payment figure to almost over 600 million euros. Somebody had to sit down with them and negotiate, which is what the Attorney General at the time did, and negotiated and brought the figure down to 94 million euros. People talk about tax and all of that. The tax is there's a difference in tax. You have corporate tax, you have taxes for equipment that were brought in. No tax waiver was given for equipment that were brought in or anything. The tax waiver, the tax component which the MPP trumpets and makes noise about, is tax that is supposed to have been charged on the monies we were going to pay them, because when government pays you money, government still takes tax from it. Even if you're a normal contractor who just does work for government, when you submit your bill and you are paid, government takes tax from it. And so if you have not paid the person, how can you take tax from the person? That's the question we should even ask ourselves. But then the point I'm making, the point that we must understand here is these thresholds have been brought in place or put in place to ensure that at the end of the day, when we have a judgment or a settlement debt, which is supposed to have, which is under 10 million, what happens is the Attorney General can act on behalf of the state and negotiate. Because you see, we can't just keep packing monies in lump sums and giving to people. At the end of the day, you stagger some of this payment. Now we must know who is acting and negotiating on behalf of the state. When we say we are negotiating on behalf of the state, we are not negotiating the judgment that has been given by the court. We are negotiating settlement payments. We are negotiating payment processes. How do we pay you? You've been giving a judgment of 40 million or 45 million, like was mentioned here. The president steps in and sits with his chief legal advisor, the Attorney General, and says, Mr. Kojo Nkrumah, we owe you 45 million. The government of Ghana accepts and respects the court's decision. We owe you 45 million. But we are not in a position to pay you 45 million upfront. And the longer we hold this debt, the more interest is accruing on it. Because almost every judgment that comes with an interest clause in it. We want to negotiate with you. The president uses his good office and is talking to you most likely as a Ghanaian citizen or even as a foreigner and says, please, using my good office, I plead with you. Let us stop the interest that is coming on it. Let's keep the figure at 45 and let's agree that I'm going to pay you in 4 installments, okay, of 10, 10, 10, and 15. And I'm going to spread it over 3 years. That is what this whole cabinet policy is about.
Quickly, Mr. Matthew Poku-Prempeh says this administrative policy even suffers some legal flaws, because if then you give cabinet a higher threshold than the executive president, the constitution says clearly that executive power rests with the president, and he has a difficulty in understanding why you do an arrangement like that. Mr. Kojo Asante argues that there are more questions beyond this threshold, and that just like you talked about the Livingston inquiry, if government wants to deal with this, we should be moving to answer the whole ambit of other questions, perhaps through a broader inquiry. Let me get your reaction to this.
Yeah, clearly, you see, there should be no ambiguity in anybody's mind as to this. This is not an issue of law. This is an issue of settlement, okay, and payment of debt. Now, this does in no way place cabinet above the president. Mind you, cabinet is a collection of ministers, and like every other government, it is not only the Attorney General who has legal expertise. We have a president today who has some level of legal expertise, but not every president you have in this country will have that. Now, the point is, if the president can sit down and negotiate with somebody up to 50, let's assume it's bigger than 50, okay? You have a collective group. And Kojo, you see, some of these things are not things we should sit on national TV and just be discussing, because some of these things are supposed to be in the interest of the Ghanaian state. Because imagine myself or yourself, maybe being a foreigner, a German, CP, and you meet with only the president to discuss. There's a psychological effect of that discussion, vis-a-vis meeting the entire cabinet. After cabinet has sat down and discussed and said, you see, the president picks the mind of cabinet. Don't forget, even every single presidential decision he takes in consultation with his cabinet and at times the Council of State. That's the Constitution's requirement. So it's not as if when the president acts and takes decision, he just acts solely. The president is mandated, or has encouraged to act in consultation. Certain decisions, as per the Constitution, certain decisions must be taken in consultation with the Council of State. Decisions like appointment to the Supreme Court. The president is the one who takes that decision. but he is mandated and encouraged by the Constitution to take it in consultation with the Council of State.
Address the issue of the other questions that need to be answered
Clearly,
before I go to quickly.
There's always a need for a starting point, and I believe that this is a starting point. Okay, the UK has practiced the democracy they're practicing for well over 200 years. We cannot seem to put ourselves on the same pedestal as they have. The point is, this is a president who has come into the Ghanaian political landscape with one goal: to start a new line of thinking, a new line of nationalistic thinking. That is why he's coming and he's not being as vindictive as previous government, because he feels that the politics of vindictiveness must end. This is a president who has coming and said, now I want us to start a process of governance where we build institutions. I agree with him. There are more questions to be answered. But the questions, if you have 10 questions, and by this action, you have answered 3 of them, it means now you have less questions than previously were there. And that is why I say we must encourage this government, give this government another term. Maybe by the time they're done with their second term, almost all our questions would have been answered. If they're not answered, the next government will come and continue. But then there is a foundation for us to launch our national growth. And so the point must be made here that in no way has Cabinet by this decision sought to erode the powers of the president, because already he acts in consultation with his cabinet and not unilaterally. And so that confusion must be cleared in our minds.
I'll go to Kweku Baku shortly. We are 5 minutes away from 10 a.m. Bright BB sending in an email from Germany says, what does the MPP want the president to do? When former President Kufuor was all over the world, who asked where he was? The MPP should give Ghanaians a break. I have a tweet by one of our listeners who tweets under the name Nana Ntena II, says, why wouldn't the president ensure that the Ages Department is rather up to the task than these shallow measures? The legal team is a sham. Kweku, let me pick your thought on this subject. Are we moving into an area where we are addressing the fundamental causes of this challenge, or do you share the view that this is just a drop of water in the ocean?
The latter. But before I deal with that, I just want to address an issue.
Please speak up, Kweku.
Is it Article 76(1) of the Constitution? The cabinet. There shall be a cabinet which shall consist of the president, the vice president, and not less than 10 and not more than 19 ministers of state. The cabinet shall assist the president in the determination of the general policy of the government. I didn't read where it is stated that the president shall consult. This is law. There's a fine extension. The cabinet, once it works out its policies. The cabinet is a purely advisory body, purely. And the president, the executive authority of the state, if you go into Article 51, is 58 rather, 51. Is vested, 58(1). Shall say the executive authority of Ghana shall vest in the president and shall be exercised in accordance with the provisions of this constitution. This is clear cut. I'm not a lawyer, but at least you know a street one, and I think I understand this clearly. Okay? The cabinet is subordinate to the president. So if you craft any statement that gives the impression that the president is somehow subordinate, and that's the impression I get in this statement. It's so clear cut. Whoever crafted it did not think deeply. They need to go back and do a recrafting so that we understand what is going on here. This is a presidential system. It's a presidential government. The government is the president, and the president is the government. That's what it is. Now, we are told by this statement, government sets ceiling on judgment debts, at least from my Joy Online, because I really haven't seen an official release to that effect. Is the daily graphic report, and then they could do subsequent interviews on air, including the one with you, that has given us an idea. But I haven't seen a text emanating from government relative to this matter. But we are told that the memo by the Attorney General had been precipitated by issues which had cropped up in the media and before the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, with regard to the huge judgment debts captured in the Auditor General's report on the accounts of the central government. Quite a fair account. And I was going through the Hansard, you know, the Public Accounts Committee proceedings relative to some of these judgment debts. And if you look at the 20th March 2012 edition of the Hansard, that is the parliamentary official records, very interesting encounter ensued between the chairman, that's Kandapa, and Dr. Dufo when he appeared. And I would want to read that portion and another one before I proceed to make my own submission. Mr. Chairman, that is Kandapa, Honorable Minister, so on what, they were discussing the CP case, so on what authority did you, Minister for Finance and Economic Planning, pay the 14 million euro, that's that first installment? Or is it upon instruction from the presidency, Attorney General and Minister for Justice, Cabinet? I mean, where did you derive the authority from? Dr. Dufo responded, Honorable Chairman, once again, when we have prepared the budget and pursuing the budget on behalf of the President, and Parliament has approved, the appropriation bill is now law or appropriation act, and you made a provision for debt settlement or judgment debt, I should say. If there is a request from the Attorney General and Minister for Justice to pay a particular judgment debt, and it is in the budget, we do not go to the President or the Attorney General and Minister for Justice or Chief of Staff. It is in the budget, so you make payment if your cash flow allows that. If it does not, you negotiate for installment. That is what we do. He was then asked questions as to whether there were specific lines relative to the CP judgment debt. He insisted there was. When he was further queried, he called the Director of Budget to come and clarify to the effect that, yes, there is this Central Reserve Fund within which they pay judgment debts and other matters. And that when they met the chairman protested that before Parliament, in approving the budget, nobody told them of those specific lines relative to CP and other judgment debts. They insisted that when they went before the Finance Committee, they told the Finance Committee that if you look at a list of lines, you see judgment debts on that paper. This is one. Now the question of issue of limits and ceiling. The same answer, this one is 1st March 2012. And the CP, it was not just the CP, it was the General and the Minister of Finance this time had appeared. And I would want to read a letter. Mr. Che was the Director of Budget. And he was answering the question, saying, Honorable Chairman, as I indicated, payments, including judgment debt payments, go through a process, but I will limit the process to judgment debt as requested. We normally get a request from the Attorney General's Department indicating that we have been handed with a judgment or there is some settlement that we need to make. This letter goes to the Honorable Minister's office. It is referred to our legal department. They look at it and they do an evaluation and assessment, and then they go back to the minister. The minister then will then give his approval based on the advice, and then it will go back to the legal department and they will forward it to the budget department to process. It will come to me, that's Mr. Che. I will then send it down to the respective sector head, who would also send it down to the DEX officer. The DEX officer will look at it, work on it, and then the process document will come up from the DEX officer to the sector head, to the Director of Budget. If it is up to 50,000 Ghana cedis, I will have to look at it as I indicated, because that is my threshold. I would approve for payment before it gets to the Controller and Accountant General. If it is anything about 50,000 Ghana cedis up to 100,000 Ghana cedis, I will just push it with my recommendation to the Chief Director, who would also look at it. If it is within his threshold, he will work on it and send it to the Controller and Accountant General. If it is anything above 100,000 Ghana cedis, he would also look at it and then push it to the Deputy Minister, who will look at it, and then if it is within his threshold, which is up to 300,000 Ghana cedis, he may give approval. Anything above 300,000 cedis, the Honorable Deputy Minister will push it to the Minister for his consideration. This is the process that we use in processing judgment debts. So clearly, already within the sector, they had their own ceilings and levels of approval.
So perhaps it's just an enhancement of the anything above 300.
It could be in their mindset that they may be seeking to cure whatever mischief that perhaps this or existing level system did not. But you see, I have problems. Most of these things that we are talking about, and perhaps we've come to this point because of Woyome, Waterville,
CP.
and CP. And I'm told there are a few others which may soon come up. And the way and manner we've gone about them. Most of them, those figures go over and above all these limits that I cited from the Hansard. I'm not sure, now I am not sure that the president can convince us that he did not know that we were paying some gargantuan amounts of judgment debts. I'm not sure he can any longer say that.
Why?
He knew. In this interview with Radio Gold, dated December 29th, 2011, December 23rd, 2011, there's a transcript. This is what the president said. He was then talking about beneficiaries and those who incur liabilities and all the rest. And he said, I would want to tell the beneficiaries that I am not out to embarrass them. No. The allegation was made that Mr. Woyome was paid because he was NDC. I want the whole world to know that since we came to power, we have paid a lot of judgment debts, and the country must know the size of those debts, who incurred them, and the payments as perhaps the president knew that his government, or our government rather, more appropriately, has paid a lot of judgment debts. He was aware of its gargantuan nature. One can grant him a benefit of that perhaps he didn't know of the specifics.
And perhaps at the material time when they were being paid.
Oh, you know what? At least we were told by the Yoko report that he stopped the first installment to Woyome. So it is clear that the president was not totally out at sea relative to payments of judgment debts, and the father was a burden, and that it ought to be cleared. I have insisted. Now, you see, the problem we are confronting today is because the government came up with a mindset. The mindset being that this judgment debts had been incurred wrongfully by some people in the previous administration. It had become a burden, and they ought to cure the mischief as if they were on a patriotic mission. And in doing so, they didn't look at the consequences, the negotiations, the methods, the mechanisms were ignored. Look, we are talking of stronger institutions. And my brother, George, if you don't mind, cited the example of the Attorney General, who appeared before the Public Accounts Committee and indicated that interest had built up on the CP thing to the extent of 600 million.
Yeah, what was that lie?
It's a myth. It's a myth. Up to today, the Public Accounts Committee, after failing to get the minister to give them a copy of that document he was flagging before them,
So-called document.
have wrote to him dated 13th June. Today is what? Today is
23rd.
How many days gone?
About 10 days.
The Public Accounts Committee, a committee of parliament, is an institution, is still waiting for that very critical, vital document in order to facilitate its work. And as last week I pointed out here, Betty Mould had indicated that she had negotiated the thing from 162 million euro downwards to 94. So please, let's cut out the point about 600 million. But I am suggesting that if an Attorney General goes before a committee of parliament, flags a document that does not exist, and if in 10, 11 days is unable to send that document to that committee, how are we strengthening that particular committee? How are we building? You see, it's not a theory by making that let's build strong institutions. The human element is also important. The people we put in charge of the institutions, if they don't abide by the ethics of what that institution requires, they will kill the institution from within. And this whole judgment debt matter is exactly so. It's like the Waterville. Did they go to court? What have they threatened to go to court? We invited them to come for mediation. We set up a one-man mediation committee, asked them to negotiate without appropriate documentation, without calling the people who whatever claim they dealt with in the previous administration. We ended up giving them 25 million euro. That's what we did. This same document, the settlement agreement between Ghana and CP, go in there. There are C&D, independent fraud actions. It says government of Ghana versus CP Construction Pioneers, High Court of Justice, automatic court number 2, suit number so and so and so in Ghana. There's a case, you know that there are pending cases in Ghana, Republic of Ghana versus CP. Then you come to D, criminal actions in Ghana, court proceedings, release of. Then they say rating confirmation. This is something CP was demanding from us. Rating confirmation that the Serious Fraud Office has completed its investigations into the road construction contracts between Ghana and CP and concluded that no fraud existed. As I indicated here, I brought the report back here. The Serious Fraud Office in 2002, December, had completed its investigations into that aspect. It's the Birua Takoradi side of the thing, not the everything. Joe Gatte's memo he referred to, in there, apart from Joe Gatte advising payment on other aspects, lest interest grows, when it came to Birua Takoradi, he said the fraud case persists. No.
Difficulties in proving it. He called it alleged fraud. Do you have the memo here?
I am talking.
Do you have the memo here? Should we read the memo?
Please.
Did you bring the memo?
Please.
Okay.
I will bring
my car.
When I have time, I'll bring my. But don't worry.
If you have it, let's read it.
Hold on. I'll give you an opportunity to quickly bring the memo in and then let's
see. I am talking.
Go to my car and get it. He says he has a copy here.
Please.
Hold on. If you have it, I'll just let him finish. I'll let you get your copy.
See,
we'll clear it up.
I am talking of the Serious Fraud Office had completed its report. That's the substantive point. Signed by 5 officers of that office, including their boss, concluding that there was evidence, and CP had admitted in writing, okay, that they had loaded, padded, indeed. AG Kumbo at the PAC considered too. It's in the Hansard when he appeared the first time. Okay, so let's put that aside. And we had given them written confirmation that indeed investigations had shown that those were false allegations. The same institution. Okay, Serious Fraud Office 2002, Serious Fraud Office that has become IOCO May 2009. Writes that they said the investigations had shown that there was no fraud. How do you build an institution that way? I'm saying the human element again. And I asked, simple, if there was new investigations, who appeared? What evidence did they provide? Because if you look at the old investigations, 19 people from the public sector, including CP, appeared with all the appendices, the evidence attached. Documentation from Ghana Highway Authority, all attached. Those aspects went to court as well, the criminal thing.
Got the copy.
So, please, whether Joe Gatte, and I'll bring the Joe Gatte memo out, said alleged or not, it's immaterial. On what basis did IOCO today indicate that the investigations had shown that there was no fraud, when the same Serious Fraud Office had shown there was fraud? You tell me that. So, convince me.
Granted that there are problems with even some of the institutions that seek to deal with these matters, and we need to deal with the broader subject and resolve it. And granted, again, in your view, that what government is seeking to do doesn't comprehensively address it. I'd like you to gradually move to what you may have in your mind as a comprehensive address to how to deal with these things.
No, you know what? The government statement, as I said, is cosmetic. It's and especially when you have the president cabinet thing included, it tells me not deep thinking went into it. It's somebody was in a hurry to give the impression that they are tackling this gargantuan problem that is confronting us now. That is the way I see it. It may be the motives were fair, maybe fine, that look, let's do something about this, but I'm saying it's inadequate. Seriously inadequate. It doesn't address the issues. I'm not an expert in these matters. But I thought, maybe there was an attempt to even preempt the Public Accounts Committee. As they said, all these issues have come up. we are waiting for the final report of the Public Accounts Committee to see what kind of recommendations they will give, having now been challenged with the reality. Because this is the first time, judgment debts we've paid over the years. But you see, this is the first time it's become a public matter. And it's also because the amounts involved are huge. So I think that this is a little bit too premature. And you see, if you have attorney generals, directors of legals, administrators of finance affairs, and other state officials who go out and do all sorts of negotiations without appropriate documentation, without checking contract documentation. Look, these things that have been put out there are meaningless. They'll be meaningless. After all, as I read here, apparently they even have limits already. But it's clear that they didn't go by these limits. Because these monies I mentioned here are very small amounts compared to what we've paid out. So there is also the need. Why there is a need for systemic transformation? I think the human element, we just must change the way we go about it.
But I ask that question again.
Too much partisanship in our politics is part of the problem.
But I ask that question again. Is there a more adequate, a more comprehensive way to tackle this whole subject beyond what government is trying to do?
Oh, obviously. Government's thing is cosmetic. I think that I will go for those who want us to also set up a certain inquiry into investigating judgment debts. After how much? We're supposed to have paid about $480 million.
600.
Yes. Okay. That's too much. And that requires a comprehensive scrutiny. That I go for. Perhaps on that basis, that even goes beyond PAC. So then we can, out of that exercise, make the appropriate recommendations. I would be honest with you, I do not have the requisite competence to give you specific methods and recommendations as to go about.
Let me read comments coming through on our various platforms. George, I'll give you a quick opportunity to react. One of our listeners tweeting under the name Ajay Kodria says, these knee-jerk government reactions are shallow and ineffective populist measures. The government has to sit up. Ghanaians are gradually losing hope. Ataimoro from Wulensi says the new rules on judgment debt payment are alien to our democratic dispensation and have the potential of creating conflict between the judiciary and the executive. Anyway, the money paid to Woyome should be retrieved first. Tom from Cantonment says, you wait for the horse to bolt from the stable and then you decide to shut the door. Why wasn't this new directive taken before the 600 million or so was paid? More of your thoughts coming through this morning. Isaac Osei says, these judgment debts threshold communicated by the current cabinet are too high. It's an indictment on our body politic and a complete charade. Okudzetu's afterthought on ways to prevent accumulation of judgment debt is neither here nor there, and it should have been included in the payment directives issued by Cabinet. Manche Bruce in Takrady says, corruption is the greatest single bane of this administration. It has its own motivations, and one has to thoroughly study the phenomena and eliminate the foundations that allow it. Shaibu Jibril Dabre, sending in a comment from Town Council Live, says the NDC government thought the only way they could finance their party was to take advantage of judgment debts. No wonder they have emptied our national coffers. Ata Imoru, I've read yours already. I've read Bright's comment from Germany. Benjamin Poor from Nungwa says this is a desperate attempt by the government to save its incompetence. Why should the Attorney General, the President and Cabinet now be the people to decide how much should be paid to persons? So if the court decides how much is due a person, then the AG or the President or Cabinet now goes to determine how much they want to pay or what? George, let me get a quick reaction from you before we
Clearly, most of the messages that are coming in from our viewers points to the original point I first made, that we have engaged in so much intellectual dishonesty in this country, especially in political discussions, because of partisan politics. And you can see the distortions we have put out, which have been bought by the public. The government in no way seeks to determine what it will pay to recipients of judgment debts or court rulings. The government is only trying to streamline and harmonize the payments of this debts and know and ensure who is paying them. Look, let's be real. When Kweku Baku quotes a document, he quotes a part of the document which seems to favor him. Let's read that entire memo from Joe Gatti. And on the Bira road, that particular road, he clearly states that there have been allegations of fraud. But the proof, the available proof, in his opinion, and he was given legal opinion then to the then finance minister. The available proof did not stand, in his opinion, a good chance in a court of law. And it was on that basis he made the point that the state and the finance minister, the late Banweridu, should be mindful of the accumulation of interest if they wanted to pursue that case. Interest, 8,700 and something euros. Okay, he has the memo. He should read it for us. Okay. Now,
what I have here is a letter from Joe Gatti to the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Planning. Attention, Honorable Kojo Baredu. Mine is dated 25th April 2008.
Same memo I'm referring to.
Okay.
It is not a memo here, I see. It's a straightforward letter. Dear colleague.
Is that the same thing you're talking about?
He says it's the same thing.
Yeah,
he's talking about. Let's
See,
go ahead.
but I don't think you need to read the whole thing.
No, I'm not reading. I'm reading the heading
Let's go
first.
ahead.
The
Let's
heading.
deal with
Very
the
well.
instructive
No,
part.
the Biriwa Road.
But the CP I'll just, okay, fine, no problems. Obuasi,
I think it's on the second or
Obuasi
third
Road
page.
comes first. This is the Biriwa Takoradi Road
Yeah.
project. The one issue which keeps coming back in relation to this project is the question of whether or not there was fraud in the execution of this project. This office has filed papers in the High Court requesting the court to set aside the award given in connection with this project, award that had been given in favor of CP abroad.
Sure.
So government was challenging it in the High Court. The gravamen of our argument is that there was fraud in the execution of this project.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Where is it? It says, our chances of success, we are in consultation with our external, I'm sure it's gone, you see, but I'm sure it is solicitors.
External counsel, yeah.
Counsel
That was what
on this matter, and will advise you in due course. If there are any clarification which you need, please do not hesitate to contact us. Now, I don't see anywhere Joe Gatti.
Okay, point to me.
So maybe he has another one,
Point to me.
which I
George,
don't have.
You see,
Point to me. George, go ahead.
The point I'm making here is he states that they have challenged it. Tells you that the government is that they are alleging fraud. And now goes ahead to tell you, no,
Hold it.
wait.
Hold it.
You see, let's be
Hold
very
it and
clear
let
now,
George
Mike.
make his point.
And
George, go ahead.
says that they are now consulting with an external counsel to determine the substance of that case in court. No. Now let's ask ourselves.
Yeah.
When that case went to court, did the Attorney General or did the government of Ghana win that case? No.
Point
CP
of order.
won
Point
that
of
case.
order.
Hold
Point
it.
of order.
Let
No,
him
no.
land.
That
Let
is
him
that
land.
last paragraph of consulting consultants, that external, was not only with Brawasi.
No,
It's
no, no,
all.
no,
There are
please,
three.
please. No,
Obuasi, which he said there is Accra City Center Improvement Project, where it is so that three.
Please.
So you cannot link.
Not all the three
Hold
were
it.
in contention. Look,
Hold
let's
it.
be
Go back
real
to
with
George.
ourselves.
George, earlier,
Let's be real with ourselves.
earlier,
But
The
why you said
Obuasi
hold
Road
it,
project. No.
Gentlemen, hold it. Let's get some
The
quiet in the
Obuasi
conversation.
Road
George,
project,
earlier.
if you read the Obuasi
said-
Road project,
yes.
Hold on.
there is already a claim for it. A claim is put there, so that is not in contention.
George, earlier you were
what
suggesting
was in
that-
contention was the fraud case in the Biriwa Takrady Road project.
Hold
And
on,
so-
Hold on.
Said he has-
Hold on. Let's quickly
Okay,
tie
I'm
this up
sorry.
and then we can move on. George, earlier
If
you
you
were
are challenging
suggesting
something in court, it's
May
because
I?
you have an
May I?
allegation. It's
May
not
I?
been proven by a court of
May I?
law.
May I?
So you can't say it's fraud.
George, may I, so that we can tie this up. So earlier you were suggesting that in that memo, he was contending that our chances of success were slim.
Clearly.
That's not exactly what he says.
You see,
That's not what he says.
It doesn't
And
say
also
that
he
at
didn't
all.
allege.
Let him quickly react to that and then we'll move on. George, let me get your reaction.
You see, the point we are making here is if the Attorney General knew that he had a substance of his case, he wouldn't have had to seek external legal advice. You understand me?
How?
He has to go ahead and seek external legal advice to determine if they should pursue that case further. They went ahead and pursued that case and lost that case. Okay? And that is what, and you see, when you come to the issue about suggesting that Attorney General lied or put out a fallacy to the Public Accounts Committee over 600 million. Look, we don't need rocket science to find this out. We were incurring debt, interest on our debt. That the total debt sum was 162 million euros, which Betty negotiated down to 94. Now calculate the interest of 8,700 and something. I figure it's in that memo.
From when?
Okay, from 2001 when they got their initial judgment.
No, they got the judgment 2006. The man, the AG himself
You see-
said so.
you see,
October
no,
2006.
look,
What did the AG say?
Look.
That's what
Let
the
me tell
AG
you
said.
something. In getting, you see,
Let him land. I'll give you gentlemen an
You see,
opportunity
it's
to
a-
quickly comment and then we'll go for it.
Let me say something.
Let him
It
land.
is
Let him
important.
land.
We cannot be landing on lies. It's
No.
too much.
I
It's
prefer
too
the
much.
word
You have
on
engaged
truth.
in so
I
much
prefer the
intellectual
word on truth.
dishonesty
I
here.
prefer the
We
word
cannot
on
be
And
truth.
landing
you want to
Okay,
tell
hold
somebody
it.
that he's landing on lies.
George, George, please finish.
You
for
see,
me
the
and then
point
we'll
we
move on.
should the point we should understand and bear in our mind here is that you are doing a calculation without the interest. The interest is monies which we were supposed to pay from the taxpayers' money. And that is money this government has saved the people of Ghana. You understand me? Now, the point we must bear in mind here, is the fact that when we want to create this, the memo which cabinet has passed doesn't just look at the threshold. It looks at issues regarding the Dansoman shooting, where a policeman went on a shooting spree, shot people, and we had to pay judgment debts to those people. Right now, no, I'm coming.
Nobody's disputing that.
No, you see,
We'll come to you
you should understand the gravamen of the memo. What the memo seeks to do is to ensure that state officials or public officials who act negligently and cause this kind of judgment debts to arise to the state must be held liable.
Doc, wrap up for me. Doc.
Why is it that TV captures somebody in Chirp on nearby election shooting? The guy is part of the national security in President Mills' outfit. Why hasn't that guy been charged? Ask him.
Connected to this matter.
He just mentioned that someone police shooting.
Well, there's a judgment debt against the state because of that shooting. Now connect that to this. Where's the logic here?
Are you done?
No, I'm trying to find the logic in your argument.
Done?
Okay, George, hold it. Doc,
Are you done?
Doc, wrap up for me. I have to go for a quick break. Wrap up
You
for me.
see, this whole statement, I don't know who even signed it. Have you seen a copy? That emanated from the presidency.
Make a point.
You see, if we bring the copy, we'll start even to interrogate it. This whole statement is an exercise in bringing issues up to cloud other issues. It means nothing, absolutely nothing. It wouldn't have prevented President Mills awarding his cronies these gargantuan sums of money.
The final comments on this subject, and I'll take Kweku's final comments. We'll go for a break.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing governance work, not for long, just 7 years, and I see these gaps in our public financial management all the time, and I'm sure Honorable Poku has been in Parliament, and you read the Public Accounts Committee. I really think we need to get to the bottom of this matter, and it has to be much more broader. And I would really entreat, I think that we should take the opportunity. I mean, I know this is an election year. Everybody wants to get political capital one way or the other. But at the end, we're all Ghanaians. If we don't nip this problem in the bud, it really undermines leadership. If people keep hearing that you have these failures in governance, it's not about one party or the other. The whole institutional framework is undermined. And I think we need to think about that and really deal with the matter.
We could final comments on this subject, and then I'll take a break.
I wonder if I should, because really, this matter is settled. When you have a document right here, we were told that Jogate said that it was an allegation. But this is what we hear here, and I want to repeat for
quickly.
The office has filed papers in the High Court,
Ghana,
requesting the court to set aside the award given in connection with this project, because that original agreement said if there was any problem, it will be settled in Ghana. The gravamen of our argument is that there was fraud in the execution of this project. That is Ghana's position.
That is an allegation. It is not proven. When you take anybody to court, it is based on allegation.
That is not what
the person
you said.
alleged.
Please.
So it is an allegation of fraud. It is not a proven case of fraud.
Please.
Let him
Come
land
on.
and
You
let's
said you're a
wrap up.
street lawyer. At least the street lawyer should know this.
George, let him land and let's wrap up. You've made your point. Let him land and let's wrap up.
That's not what he said.
That's not what you said.
That is not what you said. When
Why
you challenge
deaf?
that the memo should be brought out.
Well, maybe you're not
Please,
understanding what I'm saying.
everybody here get you.
That is clear. I said
I
yes,
think
he
our
has
viewers,
alleged fraud.
gentlemen, we all have our say.
That
Our
is
viewers
not
and
what
our
you
listeners
said.
out there
He's
are
alleged
discerning.
fraud.
They can interpret
The
all that is going on.
people-
Quick, wrap up.
I'm not amused by that statement. When somebody is actually telling an untruth, in a minute he's changing his mind.
I have not changed my statement. I said
Gentlemen,
Joe
please
Gaki
wrap up your point
alleged
for me, and
fraud,
then let
and
me
that
take
is
a
what he
break.
has done.
George, hold it.
Right.
Hold
Come
it.
on.
Quick, wrap up.
The
and then
Serious
we go.
Fraud Office also alleged fraud based on documentation provided by the Ghana Highway Authority.
So is that
Ministry official.
George, now you're being disruptive.
Let's
See?
stop.
Now you're being
You know what?
Let's stop.
I never really wanted to go into that area, but it surprises me. CP gets huge defense from people from a particular political party. Then and now, indeed, a former minister of state under whose jurisdiction those things happen, actually went to be a witness for CP out there. Now, if you read this report, that minister is implicated here. Up to today, I hear people from a political regime or tradition, I don't know, what's their problem? Against Ghana? We have cases in court here which have not terminated. You
Land for me. Land for me. Land for me.
Very cheap.
Land
I've
for
never
me.
had.
George,
I've never
George,
had this
George,
kind of banter
like
with
I
you.
mentioned,
I've
you are
always
being
tried.
disruptive.
No, but I haven't said anything.
You are being disruptive. You are being disruptive. We are trying to wrap this up and move on. George,
Clearly.
hold it. I'll come to you and you can make your submissions. Kweku, please wrap up for me and then let me go.
I want to exercise
Restraint.
a lot of
Please do. Don't be
I'll
sufficiently
pass off
provoked.
my comment on this.
I hear you. 29 minutes
listeners
after 10.
and viewers will be the
We're going to move to a second subject shortly, but let me just read some of the final set of thoughts coming through on our first topic. Komeni from Tamale says, this face-saving strategy by the Mills government won't work. The cabinet has all along been aware of the payment of these gargantuan monies as judgment debts. The finance minister presents budget statements on the authority of the president. If this observation is accurate, how come for the first time in our fiscal history, the government had allocations in our national budget for anticipated judgment debts? Muta Idi says, I'm happy that the government at long last has agreed with us that the monies paid Woyome and CP were unlawful and fraudulent. Thank God that the professor is alive and will come back to retrieve our hard-earned monies for us. Unprecedented indeed. Talking about the professor and comments about his life and his health, in the recent week, there's been, for want of a better expression, a brouhaha over the president's health and the comments that have been made about it. On Saturday, there were wild rumors on social media networks that His Excellency the President was no more. Later in the evening, on his way for medical checkup abroad, he spoke to pressmen at the Kotoka International Airport. He says it's no big deal. It's a routine checkup that he's embarking upon. Subsequently, there was a statement issued by the flag bearer of the MPP wishing the president well. But he used an expression in his statement which, for many, became the foundation for the new set of arguments, that he wished the president well as he goes for treatment. Government communicators have argued that that is evidence that the New Patriotic Party and members of the opposition really do not wish the president well and have been fueling these comments about the president's health and even his demise. And they say they've just been wishing him well. While we do our analysis and while we hear from you, my real question is, how should questions about our president's health, not just this president, but a president's health, be dealt with in the future? If you read into the Constitution, there are parts that talk about the health of the president and how it should be dealt with. Looking in the light of the recent development, should we perhaps look at it again, or should we do what we do now with respect to what the Constitution says? Let me hear your thoughts. 1422 across networks, 1760 across networks, facebook.com/joy997, or you can send us a tweet. I tweet at Ko Nkrumah. Could you let me start with you? How should we, or first, how do you receive the various comments that have been made in the last week about the president's health and all the matters thereof? And secondly, how should we deal with questions about a president's health, our president's health?
This issue is always a sensitive one. Maybe I'd like to look at it from three perspectives. One, sort of public policy, one law, and political culture. I think I ask myself, if it wasn't President Mills, would this issue become, would it continue to attract the kind of commentary we've been getting since the elections in 2008? Because I'm trying to recall in Kufuor's time or in Rawlings's time how much we talked about the president's health. So I'm just wondering whether this has become part of the narrative from 2008. There was an issue even within the NDC, people questioning the president's health. And then later on, there has been questions about the president's health. And if the president is traveling, somebody's asking whether he's going for treatment or this and that. So I'm just wondering whether it's because it's been building up, and that's why every time the president says he's going for a routine checkup or he's traveling, this become an issue. So that's one thing. I think if you put it in context from a public policy perspective, I think the right question is, under which condition or to what extent can we infringe on the right to privacy of a public officer? Because I need to take the president out. He's really basically a public officer. And there's always this debate about whether or not public officers don't have any privacy or they do have privacy. And I can only think in terms of a public interest as the exception. That when you have to deal with a public officer, because the public officer basically is an agent serving the public, that there are certain aspects of his private life that might become public because of a public interest. The president, as we've read in the Constitution and everything, has executive power. He exercises that power on our behalf. And therefore, his ability or capability to be able to exercise that is a concern to a nation. So, as if the president is seriously ill, that will become an issue. The public will be concerned. And I think that becomes a sort of, there's a public interest in that. In other jurisdictions, this is normal. If in Europe, presidents actually go and have surgeries and so on and so forth, it's announced, it's not a big deal. But here, there's a political culture and also a culture about revealing these things. And this is not just in the political class. Judges can be ill for many years. And the idea that that even becomes public knowledge is somewhat a taboo. People can be there for public servants of all kinds, all across, even our fathers. And this is something I think in our culture, people just don't want to disclose. And any time that you want to question that or want to know about that, it is thought of as ill will. You don't wish the person well or something like that. So I think if you add that to the kind of narrative we've had around President Mills from 2008, every time this matter comes up, it becomes a controversy. I would say that if we can situate it, we have to grow out of it, because I don't think it helps anybody. It doesn't help President Mills if he has any, is seriously ill and he needs to get the right kind of treatment, the right kind of time, be given time to do that, that he has to try to, cover up or do something because people will say, oh no, if you are not well, then you are not capable of ruling. If you are not well, then you are weak. It doesn't help President Mills to do that. It doesn't help us as a country in the president who is, basically our leader, not knowing with certainty, that the president is in good shape, and then we can plan and all of that. We have provisions in the Constitution to deal with that. But if we are all clear and transparent about those issues, I don't think we'll have the difficulty that we are having. So it's a culture, you know what happened with Malawi and Yaradua in Nigeria and so on. In Malawi, for a week, the president was gone. And nobody was told. And I don't understand why I'm thinking it's Ghanaian culture, but maybe it goes, it's an African thing that we have not managed to overcome. So I think we should really deal with it properly.
And
it's a privacy issue.
What does it mean exactly?
I will place it in a public policy perspective. You can't always ignore culture and people's own perceptions and so on and so forth. But it's a public policy issue. The president's routine checkup is not a big deal. Sometimes they even schedule it so that you can do that. And you see Obama with gray hair. There are a lot of people in that kind of office. There are so many things you have to deal with. So I would want it to be as transparent as possible, so that we know that, okay, if the president is going for a routine checkup, it's fine. We know it's going. If the president has a serious illness, it's fine. We deal with it. We know that, oh yeah, the president might be away for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. There are constitutional provisions to deal with it. The vice president would act. So I don't think we have grown out of it. And if you give the added sort of special issue with the way President Mills' health has become a political issue from election time, it always makes it difficult to deal with the broader issue of our presidents. So every time it's situated around President Mills. I would think we have to get out of that and have a proper, appreciation of the issue of health. It might be another president in the future. It does not help. It does not help even people who are trying to invest in this country, who hear things like the rumors. I mean, it's very distasteful for somebody to be banding around that the president is dead. I mean, that is a serious thing for even somebody, an investor who is sitting somewhere doing his economic analysis and political analysis about those things. He puts that in his data, and he gives him, no, I can't invest here. I have to wait till in the next 2 years or something like that. So there are all kinds of implications to be playing around with these things. Let's deal with it, for me, as public policy issue, and be more transparent about, the issue of the health of public officers, so that if there's a serious issue, we deal with it. If there is not a serious issue, then we know that it's a routine checkup. We even know which hospital the president is going and that sort of thing. It doesn't become, we know the hotel the president is going to stay when he travels. So it's not a big issue, but we have to grow out of it. And I'm hoping that we can go beyond, even though I doubt that in an election year, we will have sober minds and people who can respect that space and deal with this matter in this proper perspective.
So on one hand, we are calling for more transparency on the health of public officials, even if it extends to our president. But on the other hand, what would you say about and to those who are accused of trying to make political capital out of it, fueling some of these rumors just to make political gains?
Yeah, that's why
out of it. What would you say to them?
No, for me, I think it's distasteful. I really don't see any benefit for our country. And I think of myself as a citizen. I think of the business people who are trying to, engage in their daily businesses. And some of these things can even change your inflation, because people make decisions they are doing political risk analysis. And they are making specific decisions about whether or not, this government is stable, it's not stable, who is in charge. And if you keep banding those kinds of things around, it's not helpful. So I think from the government side as well, we have to be transparent about these matters. If it's a routine checkup, fine. If it's a first opinion, second opinion, you just release a statement that says that, yes.
But haven't they been transparent? The president spoke to the press. He said it's just a routine checkup.
I mean, for me, the question is that sometimes when you hear the commentary from government officials after that, I don't know whether it's elaboration or they're trying to give some more flesh to but then you get all kinds of other interpretations of whether the president is going for a routine checkup or is going to get a second opinion, and it's confusing. So then it leads to, it fuels all the speculation that keeps going on. So I think just be consistent. Okay, the president is traveling here and here. He'll be away for a routine checkup. It is a normal checkup. He does it every quarter of the year. And then that becomes the standard, and we leave it at that, because I think if we go beyond that, I mean, political opponents will, who have a different narrative about it, will continue to push the issue, but it doesn't mean that you should, cause more confusion by adding or subtracting and so on and so forth, because I think that's the best thing for us, all of us to know, as long as everybody is truthful that this is exactly what the situation is.
Kweku, while you do your own analysis, let me ask you also to factor this in, the suggestion by some that this necessarily is an indictment on the kind of medical structure and infrastructure and capabilities that we have over the years provided here in our country. Do you buy that argument?
You turn it into an absolute, you are inviting us into the realm of an absurdity. There are many countries in the world, very established health institutions. Their heads of states or other prominent citizens go elsewhere, depending on what kind of ailment or what kind of checkup you want to do. I would not, for one moment, want to generalize this situation and go for that conclusion. I think it's an unfair thing. We ought to improve on our health facilities, and I think every government has had that goal, and it's a goal that we need to continue pushing forward. But I'm not about to say because the president is gone for a routine checkup in American jurisdiction, then perhaps it's an indictment on what he's been doing here or what we as a nation have put down here. We should as much as possible, try and improve on our health facilities. I'll draw a fine distinction between the two. Those who want to link perhaps sometimes want to do some politics. And it's part of the reason why I declared this particular subject a taboo subject years ago. For me, personally, I know it's legitimate public interest subject everywhere, especially in a democracy, but for good reasons. You know, the ugly noises that come with whether a politician is well or not well, it's unsettles one, you know. And so I've had that problem, and I refuse deliberately to take part in those discussions. And also now the ugly politicization has been an added disincentive. But, you know, in the last week or so, I'm beginning to revise my stand, because I think we should find ways and means of, and it's exactly the thrust of the submission that Kojo made. That's where I'm heading towards to, you know. The president himself, in leaving the Ghanaian jurisdiction, met the media and made a disclosure. Yes, he had done what the constitution required of him. He had sent a letter to parliament. He had indicated that he was going for a routine checkup. You know, I'm sure you have a copy, dated 15 June 2012, and in line with Article 59 of the Constitution. And I have to be honest, I have not seen all the communications from the president to parliament when he was traveling out of the country. I haven't seen all. So I cannot tell if there are examples of him going for routine medical checkup that he wrote to parliament on. I cannot tell. So I don't know if relative to parliament, communications to parliament, this is also the first time that is indicated that. I may have to check. But as for public disclosure to the media, to the public through the media, I think it's the first time since he became president, you know. And that itself brought the issue to the front burner. We are told the president said he was reacting to rumors of his death, you know, God forbid. I like him as a friend, as a senior friend, and as a personality. It's a public record. And so I wouldn't wish that for him. But he was reacting to what he called rumors. And against the backdrop of the issue, people raising questions about his whereabouts, or whether he should speak or not speak on the raging conflicts that were going on in some parts of the country. That was within the context that I thought the president decided to do this public disclosure for the first time. And in so doing, I think he invited the public to interrogate the issue. And some of these questions were raised, some of which I think are not the best of questions or meaningful questions were raised, but also legitimate ones that were raised by people who mean well. That fine. Perhaps if you talk about routine checkup, which means it's been regular, not in Ghana, why not in Ghana? There are people who are raising that issue. I'm not one of them, but there are people who have raised it. What kind of ailment or what kind of thing are you checking on consistently, and especially out of this jurisdiction?
But doesn't all of that border on privacy?
Not exactly. Kojo told you, he's the president of the land, so there's a public interest factor there. So not exactly. After all, it's public funds that are being used to foot the bill. Some, even parliament, to some extent, I'm not sure if I'm wrong, you can correct me quickly, could check on those details in terms of the budget, the expenditure. You know? So it's a public interest matter.
I'll put the question.
Yes, and you have to come and answer either behind closed, is it sitting or even in the open, depends on how Parliament wants to go about it. So it's a legitimate public subject, interest subject. To that extent, these questions are being asked. And if we do it in a disciplined, decent, civil way, it will enhance our democratic culture, accountability and transparency. If we cut out the noisy politics, the attempt to play mischief and destroy people and play games with it, which for me, my spirit, I cannot reconcile my spirit with that. It will help us if we do the right thing. But unfortunately, there are some who, in attempt to defend the president, are creating more problems for the public discourse typical example, I'm sure you would have asked, but if you don't mind, about Nana Akufo-Addo's goodwill message.
Indeed, I was going to go there. Do you think he was playing mischief with that?
Impossible. Too intelligent to do that, too experienced. If Nana wanted to play mischief, why would he do it in that publicized manner? Why would he give his game away? Assuming without admitting that he wishes his own good friend, his mate in school, that bad because he wants to be president. In any case, if Professor Mills dies today, Nana Akufo-Addo is no automatic president. And indeed, that kind of card rather might win sympathy for your opponent. He's too clever. Nana is too smart. I've known him for about 35 or 40 years. Worked with him for about 20, 25 years in terms of alliance politics and agitation against dictatorship. He's just too sharp.
So how do you explain his use of the expression treatment when the president hadn't said
well, doctors, I've heard doctors. I couldn't even have told the difference. Let me be honest with you. I would have gone along. I'm a layman. Okay, here's a doctor. I've forgotten we have a doctor here, but I, as a layman, would not have seen the difference. But I had a doctor who was called on air, and he came and drew a fine distinction between treatment and checkup and all those things. I said, fair deal. He's a professional. Now we're going to get a second opinion here. So, yes, that's for free. But I was ready as a layman to accept on the surface what the professional, medical professional, was saying. But to read, to start from the correct premise that he might have used the wrong word, and to draw a conclusion to the effect that was mischief and that was part and parcel of a campaign to facilitate the smear campaign against the president, is to let Nana look like somebody who doesn't have his wits up here. Because I'm saying if he wants to play the game of mischief, there are better ways of doing it. And you don't do it in the open where you lose all credibility and integrity. He's too smart for that. Please, let's give him some credit when it comes to intelligence and analysis of Ghanaian history. So I think those who read mischief into that are those who are rather contributing to a distorted discourse. Okay? A distorted discourse on an otherwise important issue, which if it's handled well, will favor all of us. After all of us, anybody can get sick at any time. So we ought to do it in a very disciplined and decent way. Okay? So for me, that's my position. And to be honest, it's with difficulty that I discuss these matters because of how we have handled it in this country, and especially in relation to a personality like the good professor who today is our president.
George.
There's so many angles to this issue, and I want to say that at the end of the day, the president is a public figure, but I still am of a personal opinion that discussing the president's health and making it a national issue for discussion is, to say the least, most distasteful. I'll ask myself, I ask a question. Matibuku is a member of parliament, honorable. Has he disclosed his medical records? Oh yeah, from Asia. Yeah, member. So honorable Matibuku, a member of parliament. He has not disclosed his medical records to his constituents. The president has the entire country as his constituency. What is good for the goose is good for the gander. Just last week, this whole propaganda or this whole scheming, and you see, certain people, and I belong to that school of thought that says that this was clearly planned mischief.
Be careful.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm going to take you on. He sat on Metro TV, a sister station, asked questions about the whereabouts of the president, and made a definite statement that the president was in coma.
That's a lie.
The tapes are at Metro. You can go and get it and listen again.
Go and listen because
we were listening. You see, when you're talking at times,
I can't. Okay.
I mean, I allow a bit of heckling, but I don't want it to,
Yeah.
take the program away.
Say.
When he's telling an untruth, you
This
can
is not
correct
an untruth,
it.
this is a
So
lie.
you go ahead,
he said the
make your
president was in
points,
coma.
and then I'll let you come.
and then 72 hours later, and you see, those of us who are in the communications sphere, we have friends on the other side, and we know how the NPP runs their communication. They test it out on Facebook and social media, see whether it catches fire. And then the next thing you see is their media outlets, their newspapers publish it as headlines on Monday. And most times they start these things over the weekend. After Honorable came out on Wednesday on Metro TV, then the next thing you saw was the questions started popping out on social media. And then Saturday, it went haywire that the president was dead. Okay? And I think that, look, like Kweku Baku rightly pointed out, this was politics that unfortunately was done in 2008. And certain political connoisseurs believe that it added to the president winning the 2008 election because he had sympathy votes.
Oh.
It is what a certain school of thought suggests. The truth, veracity, or otherwise of it is subject for another discussion. And so if the NPP will want to engage in that again, well, they're very much welcome. Whilst Napo was questioning the whereabouts of the president and juxtaposing that to mean that we had a missing president, a president who had gone underground, he failed to question the whereabouts of his colleague member of parliament for Kwabre, who was not in parliament at that time. At the time you were making that statement, he had also been missing from parliament.
It is not true.
Oh. You understand?
Let me hold this
Mr.
point.
Poku
Now-
Pembe, hold it. Hold it.
serious.
Hold
You see,
it. Hold
you see,
it.
you question the whereabouts of the president. Your
We're not
colleague
running
who
away from
sits
the table.
on the minority with you, who had been absent, you fail to question his whereabouts. Okay? But then, very well. Very well.
Hold it.
Very well. Okay? The point must be made here. Like I made my submission at the beginning.
Hold it. I'm
His
trying to
ex-
see the connection. Connect it for me.
Oh yeah. When you ask where's the president, where's the president, and then 3 days later your party's communication comes out and spews that very distasteful lie that the president is dead, the president is ill.
Hold it. Who exactly said that?
Oh, I'm telling you, on Facebook, this thing gained on social media, and it gained currency from members of the NPP communication on social media platforms.
We know the MPP communication team, just like we know the NDC
Very
communication
well.
team. Who are we referring to here?
Kojo, we are not going to go into specifics. And those who were on Facebook, those who started sending the calls, and I'm sure you received some of the calls.
I got irritated at the phone calls.
Very well.
And I kept telling people who were calling me that if the president is no more, we will hear it. So stop
Clearly.
spreading these
Clearly.
things, let us say. But you are suggesting clearly that it started from the MPP communication team.
Sure.
That's why I'm asking you.
And I'm telling you that we saw this on Facebook, okay? On Saturday, I got the first call, and I said, where's this coming from? Someone mentioned a radio station and said somebody from a radio station had put up, a presenter from a radio station had put up something on Facebook, and then other people, they mention other names. You go on their Facebook walls and you see the questions, which are very suggestive.
But you're not willing to
Okay,
tell me who.
I don't want to go into that realm, okay? We are not personalizing the issues here. We're talking about national
Go ahead.
issues here.
Go ahead.
Now, the point for me is this. At the end of the day, let us ask ourselves, where do we want to go as a country? I don't have a problem with anybody asking. Members of parliament, and it's one thing I think I stand to be corrected, but I believe certain members of parliament, when they fall ill and they go for treatment, at times parliament picks the bill for their treatment. You understand me? And so if we want to interrogate and say that there should be a full disclosure of health treatments, there are members of the NPP who served as senior members of the Kufuor administration, who today in opposition, government is still footing their medical bills. Government is still footing their medical bills. You understand? Senior members of the Kufuor administration. So if we want to go into that realm of disclosing what and who we are paying medical bills for, then we must have full disclosure. Let us decide to go all out. Now the question I ask myself is, what was Akufo-Addo's haste in issuing that statement? Well, I would stick with the medical opinion that said there's a clear difference between a medical checkup and a medical treatment. And anybody who asks why a routine treatment, you're talking of someone who is in his 60s.
A routine checkup, you
A
mean?
routine checkup, sorry. You're talking about someone who is in his 60s and beyond. The medical doctors tell us that as men, once we hit 40, every year we should go and check, even just for prostate cancer, every year we must go and check. When you hit 50 and beyond, there are certain attendants, the right thing to do is at least have 2 checkups every year. At least. Now there are suggestions also in the public domain, as there were suggestions about the president's death, that Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's trips abroad, many of them are medical oriented and related. Who is giving a full disclosure of that? The president does not think it is something which must be discussed in the public domain. Even though there might be certain people within the NDC who feel that we should also interrogate Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's health and his health status. The president has been very, 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 very consistent on that point, that he does not want us to engage in that kind of politicking. The politicking the Ghanaian people are interested in is how we can ensure that they get water flowing through their pipes and food on their table and can send their children to schools. They do not want us. He does not. The president says he will not endorse us going to sit down and discuss the merits or demerits of Akufo-Addo's health. And I think that is the position of a statesman.
Quick question. Some raise the arguments from our constitution, Article 69, 1 and 5, and talk about the fact that if you read the whole constitution, even for members of parliament or for other persons, let's say in the in the independent constitutional bodies and all, you don't hear any mention of anybody's health, save for the president. And they interpret or suggest that to mean that the subject of the president's health is by law important to the body politic, and that is why they hold the view that there should be transparency. It shouldn't be because of rumors, but perhaps if there are things like a routine medical checkup or maybe some procedure or something, it shouldn't be a big deal just to just put it out there. What do you make of that? That legal argument.
Many people take the Constitution and turn it upside down and give it interpretations that suit them. The same way you had the esteemed Public Accounts Committee of Parliament trying to suggest that the Constitution insists that every transaction must come to Parliament. When the Constitution is clear that financial transactions which are loans, it is clear, it specifies that loans, but they try to paint a picture that even judgment debts and payments which have been sanctioned, you see the same way they are asking questions, the opposition is asking questions about why the president wants to sit down and review judgment debts. They want judgment debts to be brought before Parliament for them to review.
Come back to this.
That is the opposition's, that's the dichotomy of their honesty.
Come back to this
now,
issue for
it
me.
is the same way. The article that is quoted is specific on what the president's health is involved with. If the president's health deteriorates to a position where he is incapacitated and is not in a position to carry out his constitutionally mandated duties as president, it doesn't state that the president must disclose when he's going for a medical checkup. It is clear when our president becomes incapacitated. You've had a wheelchair-ridden president in the United States. He was the only person to serve as president of the US for 3 terms. You understand me? At the end of the day, the article that is being quoted must not be quoted to meet parochial needs. The constitution of this country is not ambiguous. It is straightforward. The health of the president that is mentioned in the constitution has to do with if the president loses capacity to function as president, not if the president is going for medical checkups.
And so for you, for the suggestions about transparency, where do you think it should begin, or you think it's something that shouldn't even be mentioned?
I think it is not something we should seek to get political capital out of, because it is most distasteful, it is sad, it is repugnant, to say the least.
Forget the politics, talk governance for me.
For governance, and I think the president has said, once again, the president is a pace setter here again. The president has come out. It is not like other presidents in this jurisdiction or in this dispensation, this Fourth Republic, have not sought medical treatment outside the shores of Ghana. But the president, once again, on Saturday, made a clear statement and said, I am going for treatment. In his letter to Parliament, he even stated his return date. And I must state clearly, the president was never admitted whilst he was outside the country. He went, met his physicians, his doctors, came back home to the hotel he was staying in, and every day he has been in touch with the vice president and necessary state institutions and has been briefed. The president is functioning. And so for me, I believe that where we have gotten to as a nation, for transparency, when our president is traveling, we shouldn't be told that we shouldn't be under a cloud of uncertainty. Our president is going for a medical checkup. He comes, meets the men of the media, says, I am going for a medical checkup. He shouldn't tell us, I am going for bilateral talks when he's going for medical checkup. He shouldn't tell us that. He shouldn't hide under the guise of bilateral talks. He should tell us, I am going for a medical checkup. Case closed. He was specific to Parliament and told Parliament, I am going today, Saturday, and I'll be back following Monday. He was specific. That is transparency. That helps governance. That is the kind of leadership we need in this country.
Dr. Bogu Brempe, before you start your submissions, let me get a clear response from you. Did you say on Metro TV that President Mills was in coma?
No. No. I used the word coma for those who want to be illiterate. Well, they are very... I'm coming. For those who will be illiterate, well, they are very, very illiterate. It saddens me.
What did you say exactly?
Kojo, don't push me there. This is a gentleman who sat on this program.
What did you say?
Should I give you my time?
What did you say? You've been
Did I
asked
give
the
you my
question.
time? I
Answer.
said I used the word coma. I didn't say
How?
what you said.
In what face?
Gentlemen,
I
we want
don't
to
think
move
it's
ahead.
one.
We want to move ahead with our conversation with due respect to our viewers and our listeners out there. Doc, I was asking you,
Yes.
what did you say? What did you say?
I'll tell you what I said. but I want to make certain things because he has linked it to somebody from Kwabri. Somebody I was in Parliament with on Wednesday. He should go and check the Hansard before he makes such irresponsible remarks on your station. He should go and check the Hansard. If he's well educated, he will make such irresponsible marks. When I was talking,
you're most educated. You can get that high position.
And here, I'll come in at this point.
I
will come in at this point. These conversations we have is not just between the two of us here. Hold it. Doc,
a family has got a precious bill and you come and sit here and cheapen it that way.
Doc, hold it. These conversations.
You can go ahead and insult my personality. I'm not bothered.
Okay, you know what? It's 9 minutes after 11. We'll take a quick break. I have to talk to my guests. And coming back to my studios, we've just had a conversation off air about the use of strong language, and we would desist from it. Doc.
Should we? I thank God we would desist from that. On Tuesday, sometime last week, I was on Metro TV. And in analyzing the previous 2 weeks, the communal eruptions that had occurred, and the deafening silence of the president, I questioned his whereabouts. I questioned his whereabouts and I juxtaposed that with Kwaku Anyidohu's statement purporting to have relieved the Ashanti Regional ECG director. And I said, where was the president at that time? Because the whole Ghana was enthralled with the Ghana-Lesotho match. And Kwaku came on your airwaves to make that statement himself, unprovoked, unsolicited. And that is the president lost. Where is he? That people are taking decisions on his behalf. Is he asleep or is he in deep sleep or is in deep sleep? The third level of deep sleep is coma, not medical coma. Get the tape. Get the tape. So if you want to twist and make statements, subsequently, in fact, it is interesting that on that set, 3 NDC ministers, 1 a minister, 2 deputy ministers, sent me a text. Your president, where the Famohome? Nobody today has come to say that I said the president was in coma, medical coma. On Asempa FM, they called me in that interview with that, and one NDC chap was there, I won't mention his name, made a comment. And Asempa FM, because they called me into the studio, said, oh, but he just came on air. He's saying that it is not medical issues he's talking about. He's alleging the long absence of the president, and he's asking the questions. Can't I ask where my president is?
Let me ask you a quick follow-up question. It shouldn't therefore sound strange if following from that, there are comments on social media, and therefore some government communication persons seek to tie it in and suggest that it was started by persons from your side.
Oh, they are free to say whatever they want to say. They are free to say. But if you are tying in, like you asked the question, who are you tying in? Mine evidence is there. I've made three calls on that on public. And I doubt and I dare anybody to bring any tape to say that I said the president was in a medical coma. Of course I'm a doctor. And I use my words carefully.
So you're a doctor and a politician.
Yes.
Help us answer this broader question. And while you do that, you do your analysis. Okay. But let me just give you the broader question. How should questions about a president's health be dealt with moving on?
You see, I am of the opinion that we have to be very, very careful when we are talking about the leader's health. The leader, whether it's a chief in a small village, the paramount chief, or the chief executive of a big company, because it has implication for investors and a lot of things in that community. So we have to be careful. But who introduced the issue of the president's health into Ghana's political discourse? That is the question we should ask ourselves. Because the first point is that in 2007, when NDC themselves were contesting who becomes their leader, one of the presidential candidates brought into the light in Ghana's political politics that the president was unwell. Spielgraber, when he was sending the text, Spielgraber is a senior member of the NDC.
But let's just be slightly fair to him. He sent the text to the founder of the party. He did not publicize the contents of the text.
Okay.
So, and the text got leaked.
It got leaked from the two of them.
Yes.
Somebody leaked
it. Spiel has publicly said he sent it to the founder. He did not send it to anybody else. So they should go and ask the one he sent to interrogate the issue. Let's be fair to him on this.
I'm being fair. I mean, but Spiel's NDC, right?
No, you are right generally, but I was talking of a small area of your
point. But that text that came, that eventually
was talking of his ill health.
You say that you arrest a lot of documents in transition, in the flow. So somebody arrested it.
Yeah.
Somebody arrested
Daily
it.
Guide intercepted it.
Okay, so back to you. Make your
So
point.
the president intercepted it, and that was the first time the president said, that was the first time.
Well, the first time it came out in that distorted manner. Earlier, the NDC itself had indicated somewhere in the daily graphic, much earlier, a year or so
That
earlier.
he had gone for medical checkup in China.
That's right.
He had gone for medical checkup for some treatment in China. Subsequently, he went for medical checkups for treatment in South Africa. That's a NDC period 2008. Okay, in 2006, even though I don't believe anything that WikiLeaks says, the president was asking the U.S. ambassador to find out the health status of Yar'Adua in Nigeria. And that has implications. And that was President Mills. At that time, it was candidate Mills asking about a foreign country's president, saying that it has implications for everybody. That was him. He felt that a president's health is important and it should be disclosed. Okay, subsequently, Baba Jamal goes to WikiLeaks and says that his president, his leader at that time, had throat cancer. I'm talking about these are all NDC people coming out. I haven't heard any NPP. Let's move on. There are communal clashes that have come, and we don't hear about the president. That's how my name pops up in this. I have never made the president's ill health or anything an issue ever. But I go on Metro, and in my analysis, I talk about levels of sleep, and I talk about slumber. Even coma has 6 levels. Even medical coma has 6 levels. So I never made the president's health an issue there. But the president comes out. The weekend that this death broke out, I was far away in Drobo, in Mr. Tiki Obey's funeral. He's like a father to me. I slept in the same room with the son for 5 years in the medical school. So I went there. At that funeral, sitting at the funeral grounds, people started asking, we've heard. In fact, I sent text messages that I know that the president is going to travel abroad, so I know the president is not dead. There are text messages I can show as my response. But people choose to say those things. Let me finish.
But I need you to deal with the substantive issue for me as a nation. And beyond
Yes,
you
I'm
and
coming
the
there.
allegations,
I'm coming
as a
there.
nation, how should we deal with these things moving
I'll
on?
come there. The president hasn't helped us because I'm sitting in parliament, and the first time I've heard the president go on a routine medical checkup abroad was a statement that came to parliament subsequently after he's left. It has never been part of his correspondence to parliament that he's going for any medical checkup. Neither has it been part of that. We know that he's undergoing a certain treatment. The first time he opened his mouth at the press conference in the Deba grounds or the grass court of Castle, he said he has a sinus problem and that he's taking medications. That is the president's state of health that we have known. But it is important to Ghanaians and to everybody living here that the health of our president is supreme in his ability to function as the head of state. That is why the Constitution makes explicit, copious articles available that members of parliament, just 1/3 members of parliament on signing, can call for the president's health if they think is affecting his functions. It is there, but we have never had that experience. This is the first time Ghana is having such an experience, and it is coming. I wonder why now NDC wants to say it's MPP. Because as a politician, Kojo, those who are going to benefit from the president's death are all in NDC. None of them is in MPP. The person who will succeed the president, other people who will make moves and position themselves, they are all in NDC. None of them is in MPP. How is MPP going to benefit from the president's death? Our whole political campaign and strategy devolves around a president who is not performing. So we need President Mills running in the 2012 elections to make our case.
Okay, so in a broader learning spectrum for the country, what should be the learning moving on?
I think that for a president, we should move away hiding his medical problems. We should move away from hiding the medical problems. Because a matter of speculation that feeds drip, drip, drip is not good for governance. We just heard around the table when somebody says, even when investors are making decisions and they are not sure about the health of the president, it can lead to certain decisions made against unfavorably towards Ghana. So we should not be public about it, but it should be known. But not that when the president travels. Could you, I'm coming to this essential point.
Quickly, you've just got a minute and a half to wrap up.
He said that he was going for routine medical checkups. You cannot go for routine medical, listen to the words, routine medical checkups to make him even stronger. And that when he came from the G8 summit, he has been unwell. And when he came, the vice president too was not well. That is all in that press conference.
No, I listened to that too. The president didn't say when he came from the G8 summit, he had been unwell. He said when he came, the vice president had been unwell.
He said since he came from G8 summit, he has been unwell. And the vice president too was unwell.
No,
maybe if you listen to that,
let's not argue
fine.
about it.
But routine medical checkup is different from a medical checkup.
Okay.
A routine medical checkup, you undergo routine medical checkup when you are monitoring or managing a condition. When you have high blood pressure, like I have high blood pressure, I go for routine medical checkup to know that the medicines that I am on are working to contain my blood pressure. When you have diabetes, you go for routine medical checkup to make sure that your sugar level that's monitoring is normal. When a woman is pregnant, he goes for routine medical checkups and is given some treatment to prevent certain bad things from happening to the outcome of the pregnancy. Or when you are suffering from cancer, you go for routine medical checkup to undergo maybe radiotherapy, chemotherapy, or supportive treatment or something. So the routine that the president used, medical checkup, is different from a normal medical checkup.
So there's more that we should be told about. That's what
There should be more that, and then I'm coming to what the flag bearer said. You don't go on routine medical checkup if you're not being monitored for a medical condition. You don't. So if the president is going for routine medical checkup, that Abakwa says he is even in need of a second opinion. It makes the whole thing even more confusing. What treatment is the president on? And for what condition will he undergo that routine? I'm not asking, but those are the issues that come up.
A few more comments. Surakati Sani says, the earlier our politicians take up the responsibilities reposed on them, the better. After benefiting from free education and gargantuan allowances during their term, the least we can expect from them is better management of our resources. Shaibu Jibril says, when did wishing one well become a crime? It's an open secret that the president he says, okay, he goes on to say we need to wish him well and to see him live. Spike from the USA says, every Ghanaian has a right to know the president's health because he's paid with our taxes. President going for a checkup in America clearly depicts that he has no faith in the Ghanaian health delivery system. J.O. Fosu from Japan says, it saddens my heart that simple facts are being misrepresented and misconstrued. Governance is not propaganda. Let the Mills government get serious for once. Why did Ghanaians put them in power? To engage in comparative talk or to rule? Isaac Osei says, in as much as the health of the president shouldn't be a political issue, I think his own party and government have brought this upon themselves, and that seems to be eating them up. Send your thoughts to us. I'll share them with the rest of the world. This week in the courts, before the Supreme Court of the Republic of Ghana, state prosecutors asked for a certiorari to quash proceedings at the High Courts concerning the Kennedy Ejapong matter. They say they can already sense that the procedure with which they got to the High Courts is wrong, and this matter may be thrown out on technical grounds. They therefore want it quashed so that they can go back and start committal proceedings at the magistrate court. I'm going to go into the phone line shortly and speak to lawyer Amalba, who is a legal practitioner, who has been explaining exactly what happened in courts for our benefit. Do I have him on the line? Lawyer Amalba, do I have you? Good morning.
Good morning, and good morning to your viewers and listeners as well.
I hope you are well this morning. Quickly, help us out with some education. Exactly what happened in the courts this week?
State prosecutors went to court and filed an application for certiorari. And it's important to understand what certiorari means or what it is. It's simply an order of the court quashing or overturning a decision of a lower court or any administrative body. So it's simply a prerogative right which allows a court to overturn the decision of a lower court or any administrative body or official. So state prosecutors were in court yesterday, the last time, last week, to ask the Supreme Court to overturn whatever decision might have taken place at the High Court, basically because there was what they term as procedural impropriety. And it's all about the fact that the correct procedure was not followed. And what is this correct procedure? It is because the charges leveled against Ken were serious offenses and they were indictable offenses and should be trial on indictment. the first step should have been a committal proceeding, which should have taken place at the district court before he will be committed to stand trial at the High Court. This, for the state prosecutors, was not done. And for them, any other order, decision taken by the High Court must be negated. And that's why they were at the High Court, at the Supreme Court.
I've been following legal commentary on this subject, and a number of lawyers hold other views, that they could have essentially just asked or appealed whatever happened at the High Court if they were not pleased with it. Some have even said they could have just filed a nolle prosequi to discontinue the process and go start afresh at the magistrate's court. But if you tie those legal comments in with the media reports from what happened in the court, where the justices of the Supreme Court were told were questioning the state prosecutors, and at times they were fumbling and there was a lot of laughter in the courtroom, it feeds into a bigger commentary that we still have challenges with state prosecutions that need to be dealt with. As a lawyer, as a follower of this process, what will be your comments to these descriptions of what's happening on the legal landscape in the last week?
Indeed. It stems from a misunderstanding of what the processes were and what the state attorneys intended to do. Clearly, the state attorneys wanted, and I stand for correction, I do not know whatever order was made at the High Court. I do not also know what decisions were taken at the High Court. If there were decisions taken at the High Court when committal proceedings were not taken, then the order for certiorari or the application for certiorari was the proper remedy to seek. But if there was no order made at the High Court and the High Court did not act on the case, then for me, clearly, the application for certiorari was misplaced. Because I am not aware of whatever orders were taken at the High Court or given at the High Court, I cannot describe the application as not proper. All that I can say is that applications for certiorari, which are judicial review remedies, and they are also prerogative rates, are known in our jurisprudence. And so nobody should think that it's an alien application and that it has never happened. Now, for those who are saying that we should have gone for, or the state prosecution should have entered a nolle prosequi, a nolle doesn't have the same legal effect as a certiorari. A certiorari has the legal effect of passing every decision taken by the lower court. And in fact and indeed, what it will mean is that that decision does not exist in our law books or in our statute books. With a nolle will only discharge the person, but whatever actions were taken prior to the nolle entered will still stand. So somebody can go to court one day and then quote that what happened at the High Court. This is what the state prosecutors don't want. They want a clean sheet. They want a clean start and do not want any orders given by the High Court to stand.
I hear you.
If they do not have such orders at the High Court, I'm afraid the application is misplaced. But if there are orders made by the High Court, then I think that they have a good chance.
Amaliba, thank you for your quick intervention. Thank you for speaking to us. Ibrahim Amaliba is a legal practitioner, giving us some thoughts. I won't subject it to strict scrutiny here at the table, but I'll give my guests room to comment on it as we move into our next bit. We've just got about 27 minutes or 25 minutes to wrap up our conversation. Let me introduce another legal matter, and then you can box both and have your say. The Constitution Review Commission submitted its report to the Office of the President. We're told that a white paper is completed on it and should be making its way to Parliament. Let me just highlight for you some of the key things that government, we're told, has agreed to. The tenure of the president should stay as 4 years. Presidents are to pay tax now. The majority of ministers no longer need to be from Parliament, which we were told was affecting, the work of Parliament and the ability of these persons who are from Parliament to function fully as ministers. DCs, we are told the prescription are to be elected. It's a conversation that has been going on for a while now. And for some, they may find this interesting. The indemnity provisions are to remain. George, let me start with you. If voted for, could these prescriptions become the panacea to some of the governance challenges that we have today?
I believe we're supposed to box all the issues, Ken, and this together. Well, I'll just make one comment on the last subject we discussed, all within my time anyway. It is interesting that Napo quoted WikiLeaks. The same WikiLeaks also allege that Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo is a drug user and a womanizer. But that they will tell us we shouldn't listen to. But he uses that as basis for saying the president is sick. Also, during their presidential flag bearership race, there were text messages about Akufo-Addo being a womanizer and a drug user. So also, should we take that as the true character of Akufo-Addo? On that basis, then we cannot say that Akufo-Addo is fit to lead this country. Now, coming to the issue of the Constitutional Review Commission and Kennedy Japon's issue, I'll touch first on what the Attorney General's Department sought to do. Lawyer Maliba has stated clearly, Eseshurarai basically expunges from the record books any records of the proceedings which were filed. Now, if the AG's department feels that procedure was wrong in the entire process, it is just right. And Nolly Prosequai would just stop the process, but it's still on our law books that this was a process that was started. They want to clear it. That said, I still have a problem with the Attorney General's department. Not necessarily the AG himself, but the department and the support staff that are there. I believe that today in this country, if you carry out a survey as to the most dysfunctional state institution, it is going to be the Attorney General's department.
A survey about perception or about reality?
Both. Because look, the Attorney General's department has failed the people of this country. It is not that we don't have criminals who have looted state resources. It is not that we don't have people who have sat in government and used they have used chronism and arbitrariness and abuse of office to amass state property for themselves. It is not that those people don't exist in this country. It is simply because the AG's department, which is vested with criminal prosecution, has done a very shoddy job. A very, very shoddy job. And they must bow their heads in shame. I am saying this on authority because, look, we cannot sit down in this country and where the AG's department, which is supposed to protect the rights and interest of the Ghanaian people by criminally prosecuting people who abuse the taxpayers' money, sits down there and does a shabby work. A very shoddy work at that. One litany of error after the other in the court. Why would a senior state prosecutor sit in the Supreme Court and allow a junior state attorney fumble his way through court? What do they seek to achieve? And all the so-called legal brains that are sitting down there in the Attorney General's department must either stand up and do the work they are paid for or get out of the Attorney General's department. And let us get people who are willing to serve this nation to work in the AG's department.
A quick intervention. I don't seek to speak for the AG's department, but in times past, the comments have been made that, number one, a lot of things are overly politicized when they will not stand before the courts. And that's why sometimes when you get into the technical arena of the courts, they fail woefully. Secondly, that sometimes the dockets they work with and very often are investigated by police persons, that investigation, if it's not tight, would not stand in court.
Well,
so it doesn't amount to
when you get a docket. Let's take this clear-cut example. You went to file the charges. You know you're supposed to start at the magistrate court, and you went and started at the high court. Was it the police who asked you to go to the high court? Clearly not. It was the inefficiency of the state prosecutors. And that is the point we're making. Look, we must have institutions that work in this country. The AG's department must work. If those people who are sitting there want to go into private practice, they should leave that place, go into private practice. Let us have value for the taxpayers' money we are using to pay them salaries. Coming to the CRC, I am proud that government has passed this white paper, and there's a copy of the report. Some very interesting recommendations have been approved by government, you know. And for me, like you rightly said, the tenure of presidency has been maintained at 4 years, renewable for 2 terms. No one person who has also served in the presidency can assume another high office of state. Okay, that is also clearly spelled out there. Now, one very important thing which the president has decided to approve, which I think is good, is the fact that we are always complaining that state revenues are low, and it's because of our taxation. Now, the president is going to set the example by paying tax. Our presidents must be taxed. Another important issue is the issue of end of service benefits, or ex gratia, where right now the current system appears to be one where you have Parliament and the executive engaged in a supposed, and I'm using my words very, very carefully here, a supposed game of scratch my back, I scratch your back, where the executive approves very juicy packages of ex gratia for members of Parliament. And members of Parliament also look on while people take vehicles and 2 houses and arrogate those things to themselves. Now the president and the CRC has come out, and the president and his government have approved the fact that we should have an independent commission which is going to determine what ex gratia for everybody is. One independent commission, every public officer, your ex gratia is going to be determined by that commission, and we stick by it, and we all go by it. Another issue, which for me is of importance, is the fact that you cannot leave a sitting president or vice president cannot leave office, one should still remain within the party on the ticket of which you went to government. So if I came to government on the ticket of NDC, I cannot leave NDC and go to the NPP and still remain vice president. Okay, that clearly has been put in there. You know, that's you can't do that. It says the implication of a sitting president leaving the party on whose ticket the president is elected. Clearly, that is also stated there. Another issue which I think we should also look at is the ceiling on the Supreme Court, where we will no longer have a situation where every government comes in and we just pack the Supreme Court, as Martin Amidu tried to suggest that the NDC government should do to win cases. We have put a ceiling of 15 on it. Another issue which is of importance, one last one. Well, there is a recommendation. Everything I'm saying here are suggestions which will come to Parliament for approval.
The question at the end of the day is, will these things necessarily amount to that silver bullet that helps us out of our governance challenges that we've seen since the onset of the 92 Constitution? Or will the argument that it is the people within these structures who are supposed to enforce them that we must rather look at?
I am of the opinion that there's no magic wand that we would just wave, which would change and be the panacea to all our problems. But gradually, when we take actions like this, collectively we will get to where we are. And one last thing is the abolition of the death penalty from our statute books, because the sanctity of life is important, and I hope Parliament will pass all of this. And then the movement for the creation of paternal leave is another very interesting one, which I think Parliament will consider.
Doc, I gave him 6 minutes. I'll give you 6 minutes as well.
No. I personally think that all that the white paper has done is not going to help, because if the government are taking those decisions, it should go by the Constitution. The Constitution has spelled out how you can cause amendments to be done, whether it's entrenched or non-entrenched. There's a procedure well outlined in the Constitution, chapter 25. So, and I don't see the white paper's role in the chapter 25. I wanted us to move, if we're going to move, that you publish the bill, you gazette it in a bill form and bring it to Parliament so that we can start working on it, could you? Because if you don't, what have you done? As soon as this tenure of Parliament ends, or this tenure of President ends, we go to square one. Because even bills that have been introduced into Parliament that have not been dealt with, as soon as the Parliament tenure ends, we revert everything back to the executive and we go and start. So maybe the report, I would thank those who have worked diligently and Ghanaians who have supported some of these issues. But there's still a lot to be done. And you see, when CRC conducts seminars and brings input from all Ghanaians and bring a position, could you listen carefully? They've gone around the whole Ghana and outside Ghana and have brought positions. And only the president can throw out some away. So that when he does that, it will not even appear in the bill to come to Parliament for debate. It is very worrying. I thought that for true democracy or discussions or debate on it, whatever the CRC adopted will come in the form of a bill. I will sit in Parliament, pick it one by one, and vote on one by one. And
correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't that what the law says the procedure should be?
No. You see, the law says that if you are coming, an amendment to the Constitution should come as a bill. That is what the law is saying. And I'm saying that when the CRC has conducted, I think I heard they spent about $3 million or more to go around the whole world to get the views of Ghanaians. And they've captured it in a report. If we want to really go as a democratic country forward, the president should issue a white paper. Yes, the government should issue a white paper. But what they've done is that the president has selected issues he thinks are appropriate that should come to Parliament. And that is what I'm saying. It makes...
Sorry, all the issues are stated there, but he just specified what the government doesn't. So all the issues they've raised are in the white paper, including those the government doesn't agree with and those the government agrees with.
So just help us with some explanation. When this goes to Parliament, will everything go to Parliament, or is it the ones that government agrees on that will go to Parliament?
Well, I believe the entire white paper will be sent as a bill.
The white paper will not come to us as a bill. The white papers cannot come to us as a bill. A bill should be enacted together with the Attorney General's Department and published in the Gazette and brought to Parliament. What I'm saying is that if CRC, let me give you an example. CRC says we should elect DCs and MCs. That was their recommendations. But what is eventually coming up, the white paper is saying that the president would appoint 5, go to Public Services Commission, and then the people there would elect. Totally different from what the CRC is.
And which of these two will come
and
to
what
Parliament?
the president has approved is one that will come to Parliament. Because no bill will come to Parliament unless executive has approved it. That is why I'm saying that we have to be careful promoting what the CRC has done, because eventually what the CRC has done is probably not what's going to come to Parliament.
Kennedy. Touch Kennedy for me, and then let me come to Kojo Asante.
Kojo, Kennedy's own is a joke. I don't want to go to the extent that my brother is harassing the
State prosecutor?
harassing the state prosecutor. You have been seriously unfair to them.
You think so?
Yes, I think so. You have been seriously unfair to them. You see, the whole Kennedy thing was a political persecution. That is why these comedy of errors. And now we are turning around those comedy of errors to go and harass the people who are being pushed politically for a certain agenda. Like you just said, that's what they believe, that if the government takes politics too much, politics don't hold in the court of law. That is what Hamidu was telling you guys. And you are still doing politics, prosecutions of political opponents. You see, they decided to take Kennedy to the district court, right? And the district court said they don't have jurisdiction.
The state prosecutors did that.
Because see, could you then not say anything? You can pass it on to the next.
The president didn't tell him to
This time.
Because
Yes, we have this time. Go ahead.
all the thing I'm going to say
Yes,
is
we have
that
this time. Go ahead.
what happened in the Supreme Court, Kojo, is disgraceful on the government, not the state prosecutors. That's what all that happened. Because they just the whole certiorari was to take away Kennedy's freedom of movement. That is all.
Kojo Asante.
So on the Kennedy issue, I mean, I wouldn't be as hard as Samuel on prosecutors, but I think that there are some very serious problems at the Attorney General's office. It goes back to this issue about institutions that I'm talking about, that we, some of the things, even, this is Law 101 for a lot of people. If they knew that this was what the procedure they did in order to push their case, they should have done the right thing at the right time. I mean, it's been going on for too long. So there's a problem. Is it people are not getting the right briefs? What is the problem? Because there are good people at the Attorney General, and I've worked with some of them for many years. So I don't understand some of the things, because they are defending us. They are defending us. They are defending the public interest. And if we are seeing, case after case, that there's all this confusion, almost as if they are not sure what they are doing and so on, I think it creates a problem for protecting the public interest, for defending the state. So we should really begin to find out what is going on at the AG's office, because I really don't understand this. First of all, I would rather hear from the Attorney General.
Which one?
I would rather hear from the Attorney General on why they're taking this issue. Because I listened to Lawyer Amaliba and his commentary on it, but I haven't heard formally what the Attorney General. And sometimes these things are strategy and so on, but you need to understand the context, what they are doing. I wasn't there in court and so on, but there's something fundamentally wrong at the AG's office, and we need to get to the bottom of it.
You don't
because
seem to hazard a guess on what is wrong. Is it commitment or?
I mean, sometimes the issue about briefs, it's raised at the time. Sometimes they are stretched, but some of the things are so basic to law. If you do whether evidence or criminal, proceedings, whatever, they are so basic that it's really shocking sometimes when you hear some of the things or you read the judgments and the kind of things that the judges raise, which is sort of ABC of law that any experienced prosecutor should be able to deal with. So there's something wrong, and I'm hoping that we can get to the bottom of it. But it seems that it just keeps coming up, and it's not good for Ghana. These things are not really good for Ghana. It just makes you feel like you are in a banana state. And I think people should think Ghanaian and deal with it. If there are issues there, deal with it. At the moment, I really feel very sad when I see these kind of things, because it just doesn't make sense. Anyway, let me just proceed on the CRC. And I won't deal with the content of it. My institution, CDD, we've spent a lot of efforts and resources trying to mobilize public input into it. We're going to study it and come back with sort of formal response. But let me deal with some procedural issues. So first of all, I wasn't happy that we have to hear about the white paper through the press graphic. I think the government website does well with putting documents up, and it should have been just made available so that we can study it. Also, without the report, the substantive report from the CRC, it is very difficult to understand the logic behind, whether government agreeing or disagreeing with a particular position. Because, you see, a constitution, it's a codification of our aspirations. The way I can exist with you in this society is all because of the constitution. That is our guideline. It's my Bible, somebody's Quran, that sort of thing. So it has to be, exist in a system. The components have to be working right. So you have to understand the principles and the logic. What exactly at the end do you want to achieve? So they have taken a lot of information. We spent 6 million or so on the process. A lot of people have participated. We need to have the documents so that we can begin to put that together and understand what, basically, the white paper is a government opinion. Understand? Because whether government accepts this or endorses that and so on and so forth, it's a vital question. What if I think that no, this is how we should go, because the CRC has made this recommendation? Where is my input? Where is that going to come? Is it only what government accepts that is going to go to Parliament, and which ones are entrenched, which ones are not? Those kind of issues. So I think procedurally we still need to iron that out so that we can get an opportunity for me to deal with some very, very important issues. And let me just make a last point. If you think about development, and I always make the example that the towns that we're seeing on the road from my school in Kwetia, Kou, have not really changed. Then you have to ask yourself whether the institutions and the structures you have put on the ground are working. So if you're going to change a constitution that can give you that guidance, then you should think carefully about whether that is going to result in that transformation. And I think, for me, that's what I'll be looking for.
Let me go to the Leonard Kwekubako to talk law.
Did I hear that?
Well, some 6 minutes to wrap up.
Too early, maybe premature to do any comprehensive, submission on the white paper or as for the report. None of us here, I'm sure. Maybe George, by his privileged position, may have seen it. But there's two things, especially the second one. That is page 19. Government accepts the recommendation that Article 1281 be amended.
It seems you've intercepted a copy already.
This is the white paper.
This is the white paper.
Yes.
Okay.
To provide for a maximum of 15 justices, and they should remain non-entrenched. I'm not too sure. It's not that problematic, but I'm not sure what that effect that will have on judges at the Court of Appeal level, who obviously may qualify to rise to Supreme Court, and by their age limit. If somebody is on the Supreme Court, there are young ones there who are not going out anytime soon in terms of retirement. There may be some people whose progression may be arrested by this, even though I'm not too against it. But what I'm more worried about is this one. Government accepts the recommendation that the current constitutional arrangement on the review panel of the Supreme Court should be amended to ensure that the original panel that decided the case at first instance should, as far as practicable, be the same to constitute the review panel. It doesn't make sense to me. Look, review, as we all know, is not exactly an appeal process. Something very fundamental in terms of the judgment, very serious points of law, important points of law. Now, the human nature, if the same panel that ruled on that thing are made to sit on a review, there's a tendency for them to stick to their conservative positions or original positions. The philosophy behind adding, which itself is in the Constitution, then it was 5 and there should be not less than 7, is to bring an additional input in terms of, yes, new ideas, because it's important points of law. And that's why the president has been sustained. Out of this so-called parking of court, which is a fallacy relative to the quality grade thing. If you remember, not the quality grade, the Chachu fast track thing. It's a fallacy, which some people have pushed, even some lawyers. That is why I believe, that is why this informing this. I can tell you this is not good. Review panel must necessarily have an additional judges on and not to maintain the original. It will not help anybody.
You've got any comments on Kennedy?
Let me check that.
Oh, Kennedy, I told you here.
Kwaku.
I brought those documents. I remember Mutala was sitting here. The gentleman who went to court, the Supreme Court, was it Kwame Amaku?
Yes.
Yeah, the gentleman had prepared all this research papers and things, and were going for that. Those were the documents I brought that day, and Mutala was saying, I'm not the only one who has copies. Everything, and we said here, was an exercise in futility. Look, when the charges are politically procured, regardless of the professional competence of the attorneys,
It won't work.
it will end up in a cul-de-sac. And I told you here, I used the Rocco Frimpong thing as a classic example. There's too much partisan politics informing the charges going to court. And that's why they are having no positive results.
But Kwaku, don't you find it interesting in this country that in the prosecution of the Woyomi case, the Attorney General has refused to appear for about 7 times, such that a judge charged the Attorney General's Department 500 cedis. You know what happened? The Attorney General Department mounted evidence to go and set aside the 500 cedis. They cannot prosecute Woyomi for 54 million, but they can go and prosecute setting aside their charge of 500 cedis.
We've got 4 minutes to go.
Who went to the circuit court
Yes.
in the first place?
Yes.
Was the Attorney General?
Attorney General.
We've
The
got
case
4
went
minutes to
under
go.
him.
Ben from Sogakope says the AG's department is, well, essentially it says politicization of cases is contributing to the many cases that they are losing.
40-0.
Mansa from Medina says cases will always be thrown out of court when they have political undertones. Nana says the Attorney General's department has a leader. What is his or her responsibility for ensuring that the department works? Schiffman from Atonsu says, I think the state prosecutors must be well prepared before they go to court and stop embarrassing the nation. Seth from Ho says, how could someone go for a routine medical checkup for 10 days without treatment? Mohammed says, the president is a public person. Our taxes used to feed, shelter, and take care of him. We need to know. Nanado does not check and treat himself with public money. Therefore, we do not need to know. Adom TV has a program known as a concert party train, 1st of July, from live from Dome. I hope you make a date and catch it at 1 p.m. I already told you about the MTN Samsung offer. You should just go to the nearest MTN service center and enjoy it. And Multi-TV and Creative Ventures, a super dealer of multi-TV digiboxes, are organizing an installer training program which seeks to create a fantastic job opportunity for the people of Ho, Aflao, and its environs. The program is coming off at Ho Pensioners Hall, 11th and 12th of July, and Aflao Thanks Hotel, 13th and 14th of July, 8 a.m. If you are in those areas, please make a date and participate. I'll share with you my final take on our various conversations shortly. But listen, there's a zero Ghana City internet charge on MTN right now. If you just key in 0.facebook.com, you enjoy Facebook updates at no charge. Quickly, and let me wrap up.
I just want to use this platform to congratulate the sportsmen who are representing Ghana at the ECOWAS games. We're leading and doing very well there, and more kudos should be given to them. We're very grateful. Yeah, we actually won. We won the ECOWAS games.
Congratulations to our sportsmen. A few fact checks. Earlier, we were told that that letter from Mr. Jogate had said it was alleged fraud and our chances were not bright. We read the letter out here. I'm sure you can make your mind up on that. There are a few other fact checks that we need to do. Is there really a foreign policy magazine report that says Ghana is almost a failed state? We will find out. We will find out and report back to our viewers and our listeners. Did you say that the president was
borderline fail.
did Napo say on Metro TV that the president was in coma? We'll get the tape and then we'll give you feedback. He has had his thoughts. Here are my final words on all that we have said here this morning. On judgment debts, what the government or the cabinet has done, we are told, is just a beginning. But my guests agree there's a more comprehensive approach that must be adopted. On the president's health, we should wish each other well and grow up in our political discourse here in our country, even if it deals with matters of health. And on the CRC, the Constitution is a big deal. Let's all know what's there and get it right.